no big deal. You guys ready? Good evening. If you desire to address the City Council during the meeting, please complete a request to speak form. They're available at the entrance, and give it to the City Clerk. Speakers will be called upon at the appropriate time. At this time, I will call to order City Council meeting of the City of Grand Terrace for February 14th. We will begin with an invocation. And I want to make sure I get this gentleman's name correct. Dr. Mustafa Kuko from the Islamic Center of Riverside will give us our invocation, and immediately following that we will have a pledge led by Council Member Wilson. So if you would please stand for invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. We all rise and pray in the name of the Lord, the most graceful, the most compassionate, the most merciful. We pray for the city of Grand Terrace and its people. Our Lord, we pray for you to grant the leadership of this city, the mayor, the city council, and all the employees and whoever working for the benefit of the people of this city, to grant them the energy, the power, the perseverance, the patience, and the support that they need to carry their noble mission to the best of their abilities and to whatever level humanly possible. And above all, to grant them your unshakable guidance to do the right thing all the time. Our Lord, provide them and endow them with the help and the resources that will enable them to cure the sick, to educate the ignorant, to feed the starving and the hungry, and to put a roof over the head of those who they need it. Our Lord, we pray to you to make the city of Grand Terrace, this flourishing city, to make it more prosperous, more peaceful, and a bastion of stability and progress. Our Lord, we pray to you to make this place, the city of Grand Terrace, a place where everyone find safety, compassion, grace, kindness, and peaceful coexistence. Our Lord, we pray to you to shower your blessing on everyone who is here tonight, and all those who are not here, and all the human beings around. They are your children, and they deserve your mercy, your pardon, and your forgiveness, and your support. Our Lord, make this place a very lovable place over all other places. Amen, amen, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Please join me. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Kuko and Council Member Wilson. Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Reinars? Councilmember Hussey?
Present.
Councilmember Wilson?
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Robles?
Present.
Mayor McNamara?
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first item of business is our consent calendar, and this is the set of items that are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon by the City Council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of an item from the consent calendar for discussion. Are there any requests for removal of items at this time?
None.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar then in its entirety.
I move the consent calendar.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Councilmember Reinhardt Hussey Wilson voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNable voted aye.
All right, thank you. So next item is public comment, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items not on the agenda tonight. Because of restrictions of California law, the council may not discuss or act on items not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements or ask questions of clarification. Are there any, are there any requests to speak at this time? Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Barney Barnett.
Good evening. My name's Barney Barnett from Highgrove, and as a lot of you, I hope, know, we've been working very hard trying to get a Metrolink stop that would benefit this entire region. We've been working on that for 15 years, and we've had support from City of Grand Terrace since 2002, I believe it is. So a lot of new faces to me. We've seen a lot of the City Council change over the time period, but it's still important to know that the location that we have is in Highgrove is still the best location for using transportation for Metrolink between Riverside and San Bernardino counties in both directions 7 days a week, including weekends. One of the things that we're faced with now in Highgrove is that since we've had so many acres of vacant land, that land is disappearing. Developers come in, they're buying up the land. We've, of course, you know that 1,409 homes will be built in Spring Mountain Ranch, and there's another 183.5 acres in the Springbrook Estates that is planned. We've just got 36 new homes at the corner of Garfield and Spring by the school, and just today I had the new owner of the 68 acres right in the middle of Highgrove that's a vacant land now. He came to my house. They're planning on building condos, townhouses, apartments, and a shopping center, which we very much need. So the problem is that we've got a lot of people in this area, and from the Highgrove location where the Metrolink stop would be located, within a 2-mile radius, there's over 30,000 people, which includes some of Grand Terrace too. So we need to plan for the future, and we've had opposition only from RCTC. I've been to the Sandbag meetings, I've been to a lot of meetings lately, and with 15 years under our belt, it's not time to give up, because the Riverside County Transportation Commission owns the land right next to the number 3 main line between the two counties, and we want to see that land is made into a parking lot and stop the daily trains that go through there. So we appreciate your support, and if you've seen the newspaper around town, the businesses have it, the Highgrove happenings, you can pick those up and look. I don't have enough for everybody tonight, but you can look at our paper online at highgrovehappenings.net and pull up the February issue and all the other information. There's a map on there too, and I would also personally like to invite anyone that hasn't been to this location that would like to go, get a hold of me, and I will take you there and show you why this is important, not just to Highgrove, but to the entire region. So thank you for your support, and I'd like to encourage you to talk to your Sandbag representative and see if we can get Sandbag and RCTC to cooperate, since we're both bordered by the county line. We need regional transportation, and we've got a place for it. So thank you for your support, and we want to see that you continue that support so someday we can get a station that would benefit both sides of the county line. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Our next speaker is Angela Wilkinson.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Angela Wilkinson. My concern issues tonight is the roads on Grand Terrace Road and Granny Vista. Because of all the heavy rains and the flooding, the north side and the right side of the roads are being washed off, and it's hard to walk if you're walking or walking your dogs because of the cars constantly driving by, so you have to end up walking into the groves that's there to the right of the school. The other issue I have is the speeding is continuing. I mean, I don't know what we can do about that. I don't know if that's in the process of the roads being repaired, but it's starting to be becoming a hazard now, so to where you're afraid that you might get hit by a car. Because right at the corner of Grand Terrace Road and Granny Vista, across the street, there is a house that has hedges, and cars cannot see as they go around the corner there. And there's been a few times when, I myself have almost gotten hit. So I just wanted to know if there's any kind of repairs going to be done, or if there's any, ideas of extending the sidewalk further out. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkinson. And we have your phone number here. We'll have staff follow up with you on that item.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak during this time? All right, seeing no takers, I'll close public comment and come back to council for their communications. We'll start with Council Member Reinars.
Thank you, Mayor. I recently attended another meeting of the San Bernardino Countywide Gangs and Drug Task Force. It was another interesting meeting, although it was much briefer than the last one that I briefed on. What this one was involved with was a presentation by Washington High School in the Colton Joint Unified School District, and they talked basically about all the programs that they have and the good things that they're doing to help teenagers who need help getting through their education and graduating from high school. This past week, I also met with some residents to help try to brainstorm some ways to deal with some of our petty crimes we're having, some neighborhood watch type ideas, citizen patrol type ideas, and things like that. And I plan to have a follow-up meeting regarding that and try to keep that going. And then I also attended the Colton Joint Unified School District Facilities Master Plan Committee with Councilmember Hussey, and I'll let him talk about that. Since last meeting, I took his thunder on one of the meetings we went to.
No, you could talk.
But I have nothing else right now.
Thank you, Councilmember Reinars. Councilmember Hussey. And I expect an update.
I got one. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to my wife. She was so looking forward to our date tonight, and I told her, got a seat for her, but, happy Valentine's Day. And January 26th, myself and Celia attended the League of Cities new elected officials over in Fontana, California. Before I get into that, they had it at a theater, and I remember that theater. I grew up in Fontana as a kid, but there was a stationery store back then. But they redid the theater, and if you guys are into any performing arts or anything, they have pretty neat little shows going on there. They have Murder Mystery Weekend and Return of the King, and it's at www.centerstagefontana.com. So if you're ever looking for it, now I'll leave that here so we can post that. But it's pretty neat theater. But we just welcomed and we got to meet some of the new elected officials from Victorville and the surrounding areas. And a couple of things they're speaking about, Senator, where I was talking about small government is needed, and he emphasized on that. We only got like 3 people to clap their hands on that because I think we're surrounded with a lot of people like big government. And then the other thing was talking about crime rates going up throughout the whole area, and a couple of, the League of City with the president from the High Desert area, he owns a business, and being a small business owner, he said it's really affecting him because he keeps getting the same people coming in there and breaking in his store and shoplifting. So as far as that goes, the crime rate is up throughout the area, and I know we still, in Grand Terrace, we're still pretty safe, but, our whole surrounding area, the crime rate is up. And one of the problems that everybody's dealing with, and I'm sure the sheriff can contest, is what do you do once you arrest a criminal and the state's letting them right back out? And on January 31st, myself and Brian, we attended the Colton Joint Unified School District Facility Manager Master Plan. I was looking forward to Brian because I thought he was taking notes. I was just guesstimating and stuff. But anyway, it's a really good thing they got with community leaders and volunteers. And our next meeting, it was going to be the 28th, but it got moved to February 27th. And the public is welcome. It's going to be at Joe Baca Middle School Library from 6 to 8. So if you're a parent or something, you have a kid in school, what this master plan's trying to do, they're emphasizing new construction inside the schools, updating, modernization for the classrooms. Some of these classrooms were not updated since the 70s and 80s, and they're emphasizing on that, and safety for the children. We broke off in small groups, and we came up, with a camera system, and I like what Brian, he asked his daughter, she goes, what do you think the school needs? And, two answers were, of course, the bathrooms, when you go in there, that's where the fights happen. I don't think by law we can put cameras in bathrooms, but besides that, and then better control in the classrooms. I'm sure the classrooms are oversized, and some of the teachers lose control of some of it. I don't know. I didn't investigate that. But it's the first, we have 5 meetings altogether, so that was the first of the 5. And like I said, February 27th, it's open to the public also if you want to come in and voice your opinion. And it has like small group activities. But one of the things I was thinking as we're walking out, there was 2 things. We have a Bond B and Bond G fund. There's $94 million left in the G fund. They're getting ready to issue another $24 million. That has to be approved by the county. And once again, that's going to be on your tax, income tax. If you ever look at your form, I think I paid $300 some odd last year for the bonds. So they're re-emphasizing to get more bonds to do the upgrades. But a thing came to my mind. You can upgrade all you can in the schools and do everything you can, but I'm just wondering, I think there's only, I don't know if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, 180 school days, and then they have Wednesdays off. So I think emphasizing, longer school days myself will help bring up our test scores. On February 1st, I got to attend the Omnitrans meeting. They had our presentation awards. They had a 1 million mile award and 2 million mile award for the bus drivers. There's actually one bus driver who had 2 million miles. That takes 24 years of driving a bus at 50,000 hours. Plus, after he's got done, he got to go on a cruise ship. So I don't know if he got to drive to the cruise ship or something, but I'm sure he gets to enjoy himself. But we also talked with the Teamsters about his closed door session, and we approved some contracts. So I was just pretty brief on that. February 4th, myself and Mayor Pro Tem, it was our honor to attend the swearing in of our 47th District Assembly member, Eloise Reyes, at San Bernardino Valley College. It was a really good event. A lot of people were there. Even the Girl Scouts. I bought more cookies, but it was a really good event, and a lot of dignitaries were there. And we got to hear, how she got her start, and her mother, and see her whole family. It was a beautiful event. Like I said, a lot of people were there, standing room only. And also, Mayor Pro Tem's pictures in the parking lot there on the banner. So that was pretty neat to see. She saw it, and I went over there and took a look at it. So what an honor, because San Bernardino Valley College is a beautiful campus, and we have a lot of community leaders coming from that campus. So if you ever get a chance, look at that campus. If you have kids coming up through getting ready for college, junior college is a way to go to get all your general eds and stuff, get that done. Because myself and my wife, we just got through paying our kids' college, and it is expensive, but junior college does have a lot to offer. And speaking of Girl Scouts, I'd like to thank the Girl Scouts for selling the cookies and donating, and the donations going to eye care for the veterans. I know they're going to use it at the parks, and so if you see any Girl Scouts and you ate enough cookies, you could donate it through the eye care, which is going to be a really neat event for the veterans or the troops that are overseas. So that's my report, Mayor, and thanks, Brian, for letting me talk a lot longer. But thank you, everybody. God bless, and happy Valentine's Day.
Councilmember Reinhardt.
The Colton Joint Unified School District, that facilities master plan meeting that they have set up, we're going to have 5 of them, like Mr. Hussey said. And the point of those is to get an idea and a roadmap of what we want education to look like in the school district over the next 10 years or so. So I think it's worthy, if you're interested at all in education, to go to these meetings, because you may just be the one that has the idea that makes everything better. So it's a very worthy thing, and a lot of people are taking notes, and your ideas will be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reinhardt. Thank you, Councilmember Hussey. Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Only one thing. Well, actually, happy Valentine's Day to everybody, but thank you for coming out on this evening, because, of course, I'm sure you've had plans, but the water, the rain, what a wonderful thing. Just goes to show you, though, that things can turn on a dime. And we are not predominantly, we are not a flood area in the city of Grand Terrace. We can be thankful for that, but we do have a lot of grade in the city, and when the rain comes down, we know exactly where those grades are, and we also know where our storm drain situation might be deficient and so on. So I'm especially thankful for the fact that the Cal Water Resources system has the capacity to be able to absorb the water and make it useful to us. I'm sorry for what's taken place to the Oroville Dam, and that being the largest dam in the United States. But I did talk to one of the water representatives for Riverside Highland Water District the other day, and they talked about the amount of water that can come down out of the sky in just one day in an event like this. Hundreds of millions of gallons of water. And so in our recycling situation, it is important that we continue to do that. But we are, should be especially thankful when the earth cooperates with us and we cooperate with it. So I'm really thankful that we've had these rains, and I hope it keeps going. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Mayor Pro Tem Robles.
Thank you, and happy Valentine's to everyone and to my husband. Thank you for 43 years of marriage. Can't believe 43 years.
Is that your anniversary?
Actually, tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. So, thank you. I'm glad Bill remembered all the places we've been to, because like many of you have been dealing with bronchitis, and I've been going places, but it's kind of been trying to hold your breath, running around, not really feeling that great. I just want to have a thought about Eloise Gomez Reyes' swearing in. Was really poignant because she's a few years younger than me, but because I married so young, I said I went to Valley for 10 years. I exaggerate, but it was so because I had a child and I went back. I went to school with her for a while, and it's just fascinating to think all these years later, we're representing all of you out here as well-seasoned adults, and it was just pretty great to experience that. In addition to the items that Mr. Hussey brought up, I went to the subcommittee for Omnitrans, and we just dealt with some routine matters that will come to the full board. He went at my place because I went to a 2-day public engagement seminar put on by an institute that was funded by the Irvine Foundation. It's pretty in-depth, and I was going to meet with staff and kind of debrief on that and do a presentation, and then it's time for me to step out of it because I'm not staff. But we'll come back with that for everybody. And other than that, that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I got to go to Sandbag and more Sandbag and more Sandbag. But there's a lot of interesting things going on there. We had a closed session on February 1st with real property negotiators on 3 properties. We also had conference with legal counsel, an update on existing litigation. On consent for that particular one, this is the Transit Authority and Council of Governments, formerly Sandbag, and this is the normal, or the regular monthly board meeting. We recommended an increase to the Southern California Regional Rail fiscal year 2016-17 budget. We received a second quarter right-of-way grants use report. We recommended that we approved the appointment of John Harrison to from the City of Redlands to the Southern California Regional Rail Authority. We also approved and authorized staff to proceed with the voluntary acquisition of property necessary for the Shortway Quiet Zone project. We received a report on planned update 10-year delivery plan for the San Bernardino Valley MetroLink passenger rail program, and recommended and took the recommendation and approved the Omnitrans Special Transit Services fiscal year 16-17 budget for the Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. As a Council of Governments, we received a report on the county literacy program Footsteps to Brilliance, and that was given by the County Superintendent of Schools, Ted Alejandre. We had hearings to consider resolutions of necessity for a project on US 395. It's near the city of Adelanto and Victorville. A lot of building that's going on up there now. State Route 210, Pepper Avenue interchange, we awarded a construction contract for that. There was an item that came back to the board, and we ended up authorizing staff to re-advertise a construction contract for the Fontana Grade Crossing pedestrian improvement project. Turned out that the contractor that they had originally chosen did not meet the requirements as they stated in their proposal, so they asked to go back out for re-advertising the project. Under administrative matters, the San Bernardino Historical and Pioneer Society lease agreement, we provided direction to staff regarding this lease agreement between the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority and the City of San Bernardino and the San Bernardino Historical and Pioneer Society. The Historical and Pioneer Society actually has an area within the building that is operated and owned by the city of San Bernardino and the County Transportation Authority. On February 8th, we had a general policy committee. We had closed session conference with labor negotiators, and this was a discussion about employee compensation. Under consent and administrative matters, we received the 16-17 procurement report. We received and filed a budget to actual report for the second quarter ending December 31st. And then the remaining administrative matters we recommended to the board for approval, which is changing to the existing investment policy. And much of that is just changing the name from Sandbag to the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority and all the particulars that would go along with that name change. We recommended approval of Measure I 2010 through 2040 revenue estimate. We also recommended for approval the Measure I audit reports and to authorize the use of execution of proposed master license agreement. And we also approved a resolution authorizing the issuance of limited subordinate obligation improvement bonds. Other people call that a HERO program, and what that is it allows a homeowner the opportunity to take a loan out against it's not so much the equity in their home, but it actually ends up being part of their tax bill. And so this program allows them to do solar panels or other such utility upgrades to their home. And as I said, it becomes amortized over the life of the bond through an attachment to their property tax. And so there are some changes being made to that. We recommended that the board approve Amendment 2 to a contract with Southern California Edison to extend program funding cycle for the San Bernardino Regional Energy Partnership through December 31st. And we also received a public affairs update. As far as our Metro Valley study session, we recommended contract change orders to a contract with Sully Miller Contracting Company and Flatiron West. We received a general overview of proposed budget for fiscal year 17-18. We received a major project status report through the end of December 2016. We reviewed and recommended for final approval by the board the amounts for consideration for the Valley Major Street Arterial Subprogram, the Valley Major Street Project Advancement Agreement Program, and finally, we looked at a draft report and recommended approval for the update to the 10-year delivery plan for projects within the region. The one meeting that I went to that wasn't sandbag related was our Joint Powers Authority for our insurance pool. I went to the executive committee that they have monthly to get a better understanding of how they make decisions with respect to the insurance coverage that we have through this pool. And so lastly, I'm going to end with Happy Valentine's Day, and thank you so much to the staff for making the room look so festive. And we'll move on to our next item, which is a public hearing. So to speak on the public hearing item, please fill out a request to speak form and give it to the city clerk. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to address the city council. If you challenge in court any action taken concerning a public hearing item, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at public hearing that was described in this notice or correspondence that was delivered to the city prior to the meeting. We are looking at prioritization of community development block grant funds for program year 2017-18. Director Molina, if you would, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you and good evening. As indicated by the Mayor, this is a public hearing for funding prioritization for the 2017-2018 Community Development Block Grant Program. So this is a federal program that is intended to fund activities that principally benefit low to moderate income persons, eliminates blight, or meets some other type of urgent need. Allocation is based upon population and poverty and housing statistics. And the program is administered through the County of San Bernardino. And we are one of 4 cities that participate as a participating city, which means that we don't get an allocation directly to us. We do get an allocation, but we don't control and we don't administer the project. County of San Bernardino sends out the applications. They view them and they determine which ones are eligible. And then they send us copies of those eligible applications, and they ask us to set funding recommendations. And so in the packet, the council has 6 applications that were received for this 17-18 program year. And the county limits the projects that can be funded to 4. Our expected allocation for the 17-18 fiscal year is $46,500, approximately. We also have unprogrammed funds of $45,000. Now, unprogrammed funds are monies that weren't spent. For instance, in the past, we had funded something like $25,000 to the CDBG Enhanced Code Enforcement Program, and in that year, we used less than 25. So that difference goes back to this fund balance called unprogrammed funds. And so we do have that money there. The caveat on that is that we cannot use it for public service projects. So it still is a limitation with respect to what we can fund and the number of projects. This project is consistent with our 2030 vision statement. I think I got those slides backwards there. I just went through the unprogrammed funds and what that means. The county representative did indicate that we could use that for the Enhanced Code Enforcement Program or for any capital improvement or construction project. The recommendation this evening, and I'll go over that a little bit more, we are recommending the use of $10,000 of unprogrammed funds towards the Code Enforcement Program. And what we'd like to do as we move further along in the year and do our discussions into our next budget cycle, we'd like to have a discussion with the council about potential uses for the unprogrammed funds, so that positions us to apply for a project when the next program year comes up. So we received 6 applications, We received an application, and what I provided here is what the project is, the requested amount that's being requested, and also what the city has funded in the past through our recommendations. And so the county library is asking for $10,000 for their literacy education program. Family Service Association is also asking for funding through the senior nutrition program, and then there's an application for enhanced code enforcement. So these three applications are applications the council has seen in the past. We have 3 new programs or new applications, and the city of Grand Terrace also submitted another application, and that's to establish a paid position to assist in the management of the senior center. In the past, the senior center has been managed through volunteers, which is great. The challenge sometimes comes when we don't have volunteers that are able or that have the resources to be able to provide that, continue to provide that service. Our previous senior center manager retired, and the board hasn't been able to get a new volunteer to provide that service, and so we applied through CDBG to partially fund such a position. We're requesting $25,000. The Girl Scouts of San Gorgonio have also applied, excuse me, for a new service program, and that's a program that targets youth, young girls, to teach them and help them take an interest and learn about occupations in the STEM fields, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. And then also the Child Advocates of San Bernardino County did apply, and that's a program where they mentor, train volunteers to be youth mentors for foster or other youth that are in the court system. And so they asked for $4,000. With the limitations that we have with respect to what we can fund, staff is making these funding recommendations. And in the staff report, we talked about why we were recommending prioritization of these particular programs. We're recommending funding for the library literacy program, the senior nutrition program, and for the enhanced code enforcement. These are programs that have proven in the past to provide the service and be successful with respect to the grant funding that they receive. We are this year recommending full recommendation, or funding recommendation for the library and for family services, the full $10,000 that they're asking for. City of Grand Terrace enhanced code enforcement, the request is for $21,000. We're recommending $11,537, and then again, $10,000 of that's using unprogrammed funds. And then we would recommend that the council consider prioritizing the senior program that the City of Grand Terrace also applied for, and at the full allocation of $25,000. So here on the bottom, you see that the total funding request is approximately $66,000, and through our recommendations, we're proposing about $56,500. And with that, that's our funding recommendation. We did notice this as a public hearing. We did notify all the applicants that we were going to have a public hearing this evening. We do have representatives from Family Services Association and from the library present. And then also I'm present to respond to any questions I can with respect to the 2 city programs. With that, I'm happy to respond to any questions the council may have.
Were the applicants going to present anything?
Yes, when we open the public hearing, they'll have that opportunity, yes.
Okay. Any questions to staff before? Okay. Councilmember Hussey.
On packet page 45, excuse me, table 1, the funding recommendation says 2016-17, the rec center, and you have, is the rec center not recommended for this?
Yes, so the table on page 45 is showing what was funded last program year, and this program here, if you look at the next page, page 46.
Well, yeah, I understand, but the rec center, didn't they apply this year?
They did not.
They did not, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions at this time? Councilmember Wilson.
I just did have one question. Packet page number 50. I guess it's about 3 paragraphs down, talks about CDBG-funded construction acquisition projects require an M&O commitment. What is our M&O commitment on this, and is there any possibility that we would run into a difficulty as it's described in about the 6th paragraph, where it says if the city is unable to meet the maintenance and operation commitment for the city-owned facility, the city would be required to repay the HUD CDBG program administered by the county with non-federal funds. That seems to me kind of a double-edged sword. So how are we going to handle the maintenance and operation commitment?
So the projects that we funded in the past, the only one that brought this into question was, for instance, when we did the ADA improvements at City Hall here, and so we maintain that and we operate that, so that's not an issue there. These are our public service projects. We don't expect to have an issue with maintenance or operation.
Okay, so there would be a zero M&O commitment then from the city.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Reinhardt.
Thank you. As far as the senior center position goes, will that be something that will be applying every year for this grant, or will that at some point possibly be moved into the general fund or the payroll?
City Manager Duffy.
For the record, G.L. Duffy, City Manager. One of the things that we'll be doing is having that discussion during our budget process. We're starting out with a request for this sort of a part-time position. We do have some other positions which we might shut down or move the funds over to if this program works very well. Our biggest challenge at the senior center is literally, since it's been in operation, it's been operating by volunteers. And so when you have retirees that are actually up in the morning at 7 o'clock trying to open the center and trying to stay until 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're volunteers, and they're retired volunteers, and so we are trying to find some assistance. So we believe that we'll start off with this, probably partial funding. We'll see how that works, but that is a beautiful center that requires us to provide some maintenance. So we'll have that discussion with you at the budget process.
I appreciate that, and I absolutely support that disbursement. I would just hate to see someone have a job for 1 year and then maybe lose it. So that's why I asked that question.
All right, any other questions of staff? Okay, if not, I'll open the public hearing. And if we could have applicants come forward, we'll start with the county library.
Yes, speaker slips. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, I'm Lisa Llewellyn with the County Library at the Grand Terrace branch. Thank you for your past support of the adult literacy program at our library. Basic functional literacy is an everyday necessity. 21st century literacy is defined as the ability to use a range of tools and skills to communicate and participate in today's society. An adult's level of literacy skills has a tremendous impact on his or her ability to find employment, function on the job, and participate in day-to-day life. As part of the California Library Literacy Services, our program targets English-speaking adults who struggle with basic reading and writing skills. Library Literacy Services are unique and are not available elsewhere in the community for a hard-to-reach learner population, specifically adults who may have failed in the traditional classroom setting but thrive in a one-to-one learning environment. The Grand Terrace Branch Library has provided literacy services to 25 adult learners during fiscal year 2015-16. As a result, these particular adults set and achieved individual learning goals such as voting for the first time, getting their GED or high school diploma online, reading aloud to their children and helping them with their homework, completing online job applications and resumes, and securing jobs. The Grand Terrace Branch Library has assisted 25 adult learners to date in the current fiscal year. The library's literacy program positively impacts our community. By assisting individuals to improve their reading and basic skills, the adult literacy program is helping to create better employees and higher functioning citizens who in turn raise the standards in the community of Grand Terrace. Thank you for considering the library's literacy service program for CDBG funding in the upcoming fiscal year.
All right, thank you very much. Family Services Association?
Good evening, Mayor McNamara, Mayor Pro Tem, council, staff, and to the residents and our fellow partners who are here to serve the city and the residents of Grand Terrace. My name is Tom Donahue. I'm the Program Administrator for Family Service Association. We're a multi-service organization that deal with families from pre-K to gray, and I'm here to represent and talk to you about our gray members of our community. We serve approximately 160 unduplicated seniors in the city of Grand Terrace. We'll provide approximately over 7,000 meals in this current fiscal year. You in the past have been gracious in your support for our program to help us through some very troubling financial times that started several years ago when sequestration first hit, and we had to deal with those impacts. We're fortunate now that changes in our service model and partners in other areas have been able to reduce some of our dependency on funding for food costs, and we're now shifting into being and taking our programs into being more proactive with our seniors. If you'll notice in our application, we talked about dealing with case management and how can we deal with the impacts that are affecting our seniors. And it's not always a meal. A meal is what we deliver. It's the output to our program. But when we have good partners from government, from cities, the volunteers, you've heard, this is a unique situation where you have volunteers in the community that stood up and said, we will run your center. And I applaud your efforts to support a position for that. And hopefully it's not a one-year position, but we find a way to find funding for the long term. But it's through this, and if I could borrow a term I heard from a neighboring city, the power of partnerships that happen really make an impact and how we can get things done. The funding that you will approve, hopefully for the 17-18 year, is going to go to enhance our case management operation. We're required by our county contract to make 4 wellness visits with our seniors in homebound. But we found that the impacts of age and is driving a lot of people into this homebound meal category. And what we're trying to do is get in there and look for ways to intercede in advance of these problems occurring through enhanced case management. And what that does, it helps us to spend more time with seniors, to look for resources and referrals to other partnering organizations, to get them services before it becomes a problem, before they have to go to the emergency room, before they have to deal with a neglected home repair, that maybe we could connect them with groups like Habitat for Humanity and other organizations that can help them with these problems. We have been in this region for 1953. We started as a project of the Junior League in Riverside with family counseling services. We have a depth of experience within our program to administer this type of operation. This funding will provide over 500 hours of additional hours of support to your residents with this funding from CDBG. We thank you for your past consideration of support, and we thank you for your consideration for this enhanced case management support services for the senior citizens here in Grand Terrace.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have somebody to speak about the enhanced code enforcement?
Madam Mayor, city staff had previously provided a annual update from the previous fiscal year for enhanced for the code enforcement program, and included that in that was some statistics with respect to the CDBG program. I apologize, I don't have that with me. I can forward that to the council, can also provide an update. But the enhanced code enforcement program, basically each day our code enforcement officers, and this includes the weekend since we have weekend code enforcement, they will go into the census tract area and they'll do inspections throughout. They do inspections in the commercial area that recently was acquired by Sandbag. Before it was acquired, we had a dwindling of tenants within those structures, and so we were getting code enforcement issues, and so they would address those. There's a lot of graffiti issues that come up within that area. We also have, as the council knows, a lot of illegal dumping, and so that's also monitored, and we follow up with our sheriff's department so that so that police reports are done, so that we can demonstrate that we do have an issue, so we can hopefully look at that issue again with respect to the trestle and access through that. But it is an everyday follow-up that we do within that program. We monitor that, we do our documentation, we put in for our funding reimbursement through the county.
Okay, thank you. Is there somebody that wanted to speak about the senior center as well?
Okay, so when the city manager and I worked on this particular application, what we envisioned was to be able to at least partially fund a position that would assist with respect to the daily operations. As the council knows, we have quite a bit of seniors, primarily Grand Terrace seniors. We do have a few from some of our outlying cities, but there's a lot of programs that occur with respect to social activities. There's some educational activities that occur. The senior nutrition program is held there. We also have the bus program.
Right.
And so our bus driver is at the senior center daily, but what we anticipate is that this position will offset and relieve those volunteer hours so that there is more of or just maybe a better flow with respect to having a paid employee and employees here at City Hall, and there's a better connection and a flow with respect to how that operates.
In addition to that, Mayor and Council, one of the things that we're noticing is that the program offering that we have for classes for the seniors is sort of limited. So by having a permanent staff there, they'll be able to contact the various organizations. Like right now, we're in contact with the Office of Aging, and they have different programs. They can come in about nutrition. They can come in and talk about various things. And so we believe if we're able to increase the offerings at the senior center, we'll get more activities at the senior center. You know, we've accomplished a significant tasks by having the bus in place now, so there's transportation to get the seniors there. For example, one of the things that we recently implemented was that we now go to Brookdale every day at 9:45, and we spend 15 minutes there, and we wait and see if they have anyone who wants to get on the bus. And we've talked with their coordinator, so we're trying to bring our numbers up. We also go over to the High Grove Library. We spend 15 minutes there, and we wait. So anyone in High Grove that is north of Center is able to do door-to-door pickup, or anyone beyond that can actually go to the library as a pickup. And so we're trying to have more offerings, and so that having the staff person will allow a staff person to come in and help with the opening, and then the volunteers can help with the closing, or vice versa. So we're hoping that the paid staff will be able to provide more offerings and service, and also to assist the volunteers in the operation of the program.
All right, thank you. Are there any other applicants that are here tonight that wanted to speak?
None.
Okay. Were there requests to speak by the public on this item?
None.
No? Okay. I will close public hearing then and bring it back to council for their deliberation and consideration of a motion.
I move the item recommendation to conduct a public hearing for the prioritization of eligible applicants 2017-18 Community Development Block Grant Funding, and to prioritize funding allocations, authorize staff to submit the city's CDBG funding recommendation to the County of San Bernardino Economic Development Agency.
Including the 4 items that were requested by, or recommended by staff?
Well, it's prioritize funding allocations, authorize staff to submit the recommendation.
Second.
So you're prioritizing the San Bernardino County Library request, the Family Services request, the Enhanced Code Enforcement request, and the Senior Center?
Well, since we're doing the recommendation, I didn't think we had to itemize it.
Well, there's 6 applicants.
Yeah, and they recommended.
And they recommended, so we're taking their recommendation?
Yeah.
Because they just said prioritize funding. They didn't say which ones. So I'm just clarifying that that's what you're saying. So we have a motion and a second for those?
Yes.
All right, please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Reinhardt, Wilson, Hussey voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNabo voted aye.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to unfinished business. Item 5 is City Council discussion on advanced planning of 40 acres north of Vivienda Avenue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As indicated by the mayor, this is a continuation of a discussion that we've had previously. So the council had received a request previously from a resident that the city council consider zoning of this particular area to allow 1 acre ranchette homes with agricultural related uses. And the council did have that discussion on November 15th of this past year, and they tasked staff to provide the council an estimate on the cost that would be incurred or could be incurred to consider the request. And this aerial here is just a reference aerial really to give the council, this is the area we're talking about here. And I just wanted the council to have a bigger picture with the Santa Ana River towards the north. This is La Cadena, so we go into Colton in this area here. This is Colton as well. This is Washington Street, and it terminates here. But Colton does anticipate this going through to La Cadena. And so I just wanted to give the council a little bit of the broader picture in this particular area. But one of the things the council asked is that we provide some zoning history with respect to this area. When the city incorporated in 1978, the city council at that time adopted the county's zoning code and map and the county's general plan. In 1984, the city council adopted its first general plan. And that plan, as we know, it's a framework and the guiding document for land uses in the city. And so it identified land use designations for all properties within the city. And as part of that effort, environmental impact report was prepared and certified by the city council. And so once that general plan was adopted, the next step that the staff took at that time was to amend our zoning map to be consistent with the general plan. And approximately 40 separate locations were looked at and redesignated at that time. And at these two particular areas that we're talking about, this area, I refer to the North 40 because it's approximately 40 acres and on the north side of the city. This yellow half is referred to as Area 9 back in 1984. And so in 1978, it had a floodplain designation. When the zoning was done after the general plan update, it became M2 floodplain. And then currently what is zoned is M2 with the floodplain overlay. This area down here, and this area is all vacant. This area down here has 2 existing residential uses, and it also has this house that's been vacant for several years. But this area in 1978 was zoned light agricultural, which is what the county had. And in 1984, when after the general plan, it was designated M2 industrial, and that's the designation that's in place right now with the floodplain and agricultural overlay on those properties. And with regard to property ownership, this particular area is made up of approximately 8 parcels, and 2 of these very large parcels are owned by Highland Service Corporation. Edison has a property here, and then these are privately owned also, Davis Family Trust, McConnell, Rich, and Makshanoff. So when we had this discussion last time, at that time, 2 property owners spoke, and for the purposes of this discussion, staff did send out advisory letters to all the property owners that we have this bigger question, and we started having this discussion, but we would like them to also be aware and participate in this discussion. Also, when we talked about this in November, one of the challenges that staff anticipated was how do we handle the California Environmental Quality Act requires all projects to be evaluated for potential impacts. And so at the time, the approach that staff was taking was more of a specific project level approach. We didn't feel that was going to be the best way to approach this. Rather, in trying to balance the request that we're hearing from residents, and also to balance how we achieve that request, but still do it in the simplest way possible, we are recommending an approach that provides the framework to allow property owners to provides a framework to allow the existing residential uses to continue. To establish some sort of agricultural and residential use. And so right now, because of the M2 zoning, those property owners, and they're aware of this because we've had this discussion a few years back, their homes are non-conforming uses. And so what we would like to do with this process is eliminate that non-conformity. We would establish a framework for agricultural and residential uses. We'd establish zoning and general plan designations to allow that framework. And then we will conduct a CEQA analysis to support the framework we're talking about. And so the CEQA analysis that we're looking at is more of an approach of an EIR was done for the general plan, and under CEQA, the EIR can be amended, it can be supplemented, or if the changes are technical in nature or not generating any impact greater than what was originally discussed, we can do an addendum. And the addendum is what we're recommending in this particular instance. And so, in speaking to a planning consultant, gave him this big picture discussion, he looked at the area, he recommended that he can provide the service as far as establishing the framework with the zoning and the general plan and the CEQA addendum for a cost of approximately $18,000. And what this will allow, with these changes, with this approach that we're taking, again, it would remove the nonconformity on the occupied residential uses. It would provide a process for that existing single-family vacant residential structure to be reoccupied with agricultural uses. That process, after the city goes through and amends the regulations, would be a zoning application. And also, again, every project requires a CEQA analysis, but there's a tiered analysis, and so the very simplest is a CEQA exemption. And so we would look to see that, we would strive to find a CEQA exemption to allow the reoccupancy of that structure. Future development, so this would allow a vehicle for future development as well, and in any future development such as new building structures, lot splits, or things like that, would require the requisite development applications. And then at that point, the CEQA analysis starts to be a lot more specific with respect to that particular request. And so the approach that's recommended in the staff report would achieve these changes. So what we're providing, again, is the vehicle to allow agricultural and residential uses. I do want to go back to this property ownership. When we provided advisory notice to these property owners, we did get correspondence from the real estate company that represents the property owner here, Highland Service Corporation. And they are not in agreement with changing the zoning in this area to allow residential and agricultural uses. These two properties are in escrow, and the potential buyer has also submitted a letter opposing light agricultural or residential uses in this area and also down farther south. Those two pieces of correspondence were provided to the council prior to this meeting, and so the council does have that information there. So the next steps that staff would anticipate is having a discussion with those affected property owners within the 40 acres to look at the potential changes that could occur. It could be the entire 40 acres, it could be just the south half, to be consistent with what was done in 1978 when those properties towards the south had that light agricultural designation. So that would be the next step, is to enter into the contract with the consultant, have a discussion with the affected property owners, and then start looking at providing that framework with respect to the regulatory changes we would make. And with that, I'm happy to respond to any questions. I do want to make a clarification for the council. In the fiscal impact, we put the amount of $25,500, because what that did was, if the city initiates these changes, then those fees that would have come in with the application would be fees that we wouldn't see. We would basically absorb that cost, and so I added that just for reference. But the actual contract that we would enter with the consultant would be for $18,000.
So the zoning applications, if
Yes.
they were absorbed by the city? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Council have any other questions of staff? Councilmember Wilson.
So if I understand the process that we're talking about, you've got a down zone to a general plan EIR, and it would be an environmental addendum that would implement the general plan EIR change. So what you'd in essence end up with is a focused addendum. I guess my question is with a couple of items, and one thing I really see a concern here is in some of our diatribe, it talks about on page 267, in 2010, City Council adopted an update to the general plan, blah, blah, blah. It says in the third sentence is severe flooding. In the 38 years that I've been in this neck of the woods, I don't think we've had severe flooding there. I think things have changed drastically, and if there was some kind of a significant impact, other than what happened back in 1984, I can't imagine that there would be anything other than probably flooding, maybe circulation. Mm-hmm. Circulation hasn't changed a whole lot, so it's been the same situation, but the flooding situation, as we both know, the way that the flood folks do it at FEMA is until somebody sponsors a plan to do a CLOMR or a LOMR, they start out with a broad brush type of approach, and none of that gets changed until somebody actually sponsors the change to it, and we go through the whole rigmarole to change that map. I guess I just don't see any other important impacts that would jack our price up to $25,500 when we're talking about a focused EIR.
The approach on the addendum, again, addendum means that, as council knows, it's that the changes that are being considered, for instance, the change to the general plan designation, is not creating any impact that wasn't already considered. This area does have the floodplain that comes down to about this area based on the FEMA maps that were done, I believe, not too long ago, maybe 2013.
But isn't that that's a 1 foot flood zone?
Yes.
Yeah. 100-year storm.
And the council, again, we adopted a floodplain ordinance. So any development would also have to comply with the floodplain ordinance. So that helps to mitigate potential for impacts. You know, you raise the foundation so that it's outside of the flood level and things like that. So,
I guess my question centers around the idea that just because it's a 1 foot flood zone at this point doesn't mean that it's something that would have to be mitigated for ultimately depending on the project.
okay.
For example, if it's an ag use, which we already had for an overlay circumstance, or if it was an industrial, as we know, kind of has an exception based under FEMA regs where they say, you know, if you can get out of the way, you know, for a 1 foot flood, then you're pretty safe, unless you've got some kind of engineering bump up in relation to the safe zone. But a 1 foot flood zone really isn't a whole lot, and not only agricultural, but also you know, any kind of a commercial use, and especially an industrial, really wouldn't be impacted by a 1 foot flood zone. So, and if it was a project specific application, it's a pretty good chance that it'll get washed out altogether.
Right. So if it's a project-specific application, for instance, the examples of industrial or commercial, through that process, we would look at those impacts. And I understand what you're saying. You're saying that the project can be designed in such a way that the flooding impacts is minimized.
Gotcha.
Right.
Because it is kind of I mean, even though it is a FEMA map, it's still kind of at our discretion how we handle the circumstance based on the specific project application. Okay. All right, so are there any other things that we don't know about so far as bombs? Because $18,000 up to $25,500, I'm trying to determine, I guess in my mind, what the assumptions were when you had your discussion.
Yes. So part of our assumptions when we're having this discussion is that we have approximately 40 acres of industrially zoned land, and what we anticipate doing is doing a really brief analysis with respect to what type of traffic would be expected to be generated with industrial uses. And then we look at, if we move forward with 1 acre residential, what traffic demand that would create. And it's either, it may not be the entire area that goes to the 1 acre, ranchette, but we would look at that difference and we would expect a reduction in traffic generation. And so that reduction in traffic generation also relates to reduction in potential for greenhouse gas emissions or air quality impacts. And so we feel that it's really traffic driven as well, and so that helps us support and substantiate the addendum. And so that's the approach we're taking, that we're going to have less impacts with respect to traffic circulation, air quality, and those are really the biggies. The flood issue that you also raised, council member, that's something we would take a look at, but I've had this conversation several times about the comfort level we have with an addendum.
Okay, so at this point, I guess for the council's benefit, we're looking at basically kind of a not to exceed 25 grand if it's going to benefit the community in the long run. But what we're really basing that on is it's a fairly extreme down zone. And down zones historically usually can find you can make a finding that says if it's a down zone, it's less. And a down zone in this particular case is substantially less. And when you talk about air quality, that's a regional consideration, so they wouldn't be able to really square that completely anyway. So now we're talking about circulation and the flood zone situation, and when a project specific thing. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to nail it down to the point here where it's edible. When we look at this thing, we see a $25,000 chunk of money. We, as a city council, we're looking at that and saying, hey, we're spending the community's money to be able to benefit the community for something. And what I see is that at the very most, it's going to be, in a focused EIR situation, not any more than this, and it should be substantially less. That's all I'm trying to get to.
Mayor Pro Tem Robles.
Yeah, I've been attending quite a number of environmental justice conferences, banquets, and conferences, and I've been networking with folks that have approached me. One of them was the California EPA in response to a question I had about the Santa Fe properties, because the fuel they were using at the time, the idling that they were doing, was impacting that neighborhood. And because one of the things in talking to council member from San Bernardino, who's also a planning university professor, is that we have to consider in this area, we don't have the jobs, but we get all the smog, and we have the inverse layer that just hangs over us. We're becoming a distribution center that doesn't really hire people, but has a lot of truck traffic. And so all the stuff with SCAG and all that I'm seeing is they're looking at down zoning to mitigate or offset other impacts. For example, we know the traffic counts are high on Barton. We know they're not expanding the freeway because there's less cars or less. So, it's a constant game of mitigations with expansion because we're still in California. One of the great things that I saw was, a lot of cities where they had an area like this and they turned it into parkland. So as it comes into my limited training with planning and you have a general plan document was supposed to be a global vision, and then you amend it because that vision has changed. Now, it could be either driven by a developer, or it could be driven if this council has a collective vision for what this city is going to be. In my opinion, that area is near the Santa Ana River. It's near the Santa Ana River trails. There's a potential for that area to maybe one day be the home of a regional park. And I just don't, and if you looked at the topography map, you see a lot of residential uses. It doesn't seem to me compatible to keep moving the direction of adding industrial uses. So we have a choice to sit here and then go item by item industrial uses that we have said that's our vision for, and to sit and possibly argue with applicants that that's no longer our vision. So we have to make a decision here what our vision is, because, or we can, toss this aside, and then we're going to have applicants that are going to come with industrial uses. Is that what we really want? So that's my viewpoint. And the 18,000, I don't think is that large for the grief that we could encounter by a hearing process of listening to stuff that maybe we don't really want. That's no longer our vision. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions of staff at this time? I will ask my colleagues to consider the property owner that has written to us and told us that his property is in escrow, and a change to the zoning will change the outcome of that escrow probably. And that is a lot of money lost on a property owner who was counting on the rules of the city staying what they were when he was selling his property.
So are you telling us what we're supposed to do?
I'm just asking you to consider this property owner, and
Going to speak? Let him speak.
he sent you written correspondence.
And I want to say I got this correspondence 5 minutes before the meeting started.
All right. Katie Guthrie is our first speaker.
Hello, my name is Katie Guthrie, and I live at 21769 Vivienda. I live right on top of the blue area on the map there in that neighborhood. And as a resident of Grand Terrace and a homeowner, I feel very strongly that we need to get that out of industrial on a personal level, because it'll maintain my property values. I feel like if that goes industrial, my property values will plummet. I know with the Manhole Company, that would have been a nightmare. So I hate to see light industrial be in a residential area. And so just wanted to give you my input on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Edward Giroux is our next speaker.
Madam Mayor, Pro Tem, Council, thank you for having me here. I'm Becky Giroux's husband, Ed, and we live on Vivienda Avenue, just above this project as well. And for disclosure, I am part of the 5-member team here for the Planning Commission for the City of Grand Terrace. This area has been, nothing has come to the Planning Commission since I've been on, and I've been on a little over 2 years of trying to develop this area as commercial. However, the industry that has come in was pretty much objected to by the community and the folks that lived around this area who was trying to develop the area. And the infrastructure for this area, I believe I heard Ms. Molina say that Washington may be continued through. I don't know if that, did I hear that right?
I didn't hear it.
Okay, well, I've heard it before, and I have spoke with the planning commissioner of the city of Colton, one of the commissioners there. There was discussion, but it hasn't gone very far either with them. This area, even though it's a flood zone, there's many flood zones in the state of California that support residential districts if you just plan and do the codes correctly for building. And in this particular area, the infrastructure for commercial to come in is going to be quite expensive to bring it up to speed for commercial traffic, trucks, etc. And the roads to lead off of Barton to get there feasibly just will not support commercial traffic without massive improvements. And if we're going to be dealing, we still don't know if the railroad's going to be adding a lane. That's going to change a lot on Vivienda, as well as the road that parallels the railroad tracks. So I would like to see this be moved out of an industrial or light industrial, more to the ranchette style area for one home per acre. That'll be a lot more easier to develop and would be able to handle the infrastructure of the additional traffic for residential or farm use. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Chris Crawford.
Good evening, Mrs. Mayor and Council. May I have Ron Kemper speak first? He's my property manager and broker on the Highland Service Corporation.
Certainly.
Great, thanks.
Ron Kemper of Kemper Real Estate, 1770 North Arrowhead Avenue, San Bernardino, California. The first thing that I'd like to call to your attention is that, at least in the correspondence that we got, it put forth that the property owners were requesting the change in the zoning. My property owner, or the people that I represent, own over 3/4 of the 40 acres, and they are not requesting a zone change. This has been zoned this way since 1984, almost 50 years. We have got a buyer for the property. We're in escrow, and we now have neighbors that want the zoning changed on our property. We're not opposed to them changing their zoning on their 13 acres. But we are opposed to them representing that we want our zoning changed. We do not. So I would ask the council to keep in mind, we're happy to be good neighbors. We're happy to support our neighbors and their request for a zone change. And we would hope they would give us the same consideration. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kemper. Next speaker, Chris Crawford.
Hi, Chris Crawford. I'm the owner of Highland Service Corporation, 1770 North Arrowhead, San Bernardino. Ron pretty well summed it up. We're happy to be good neighbors. If our neighbors want their zone changed, great, happy to do that. I would hate to see the zone change and, blow a sale that we have going. So appreciate your consideration, and
Thank
happy
you,
Valentine's Day.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Roxana Garcia, Field Representative for Assemblymember Eloise Gomez-Reyes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I first would like to start off by saying thank you so much for those who attended our community swearing-in ceremony. And also just wanted to introduce myself as one of the field representatives in our office. Daniel Peden, another field representative who actually represents the city of Grand Terrace, was not able to attend tonight, but I do have some business cards that I would like to leave here for anyone that has any questions. But I did want to mention pertaining to this planning of the 40 acres of north of Bibienda Avenue to rezoning from industrial to agriculture. Just wanted to touch base on AB 551, which is the California's new urban agriculture property tax incentive, which became law in 2014 and provides an opportunity for landowners that have vacant land to reduce their taxes by contributing to the local economy through the local food system. This legislation allows city government, with approval from their county board of supervisors, to designate areas within their boundaries as urban agriculture incentive zones. This legislation allows private and vacant land to be used for agricultural purposes with an agreement of a 5-year contract. In return, the property will be assessed as agricultural land, essentially reducing property taxes for their owners. We want the council to access our office to help with your decision, although we are not taking an official we're not approving or opposing whatever decision you may make. But we do want to make ourselves available to you guys for any information that we can provide on a state level. And we are located in the city of San Bernardino, and you guys are welcome to come visit anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. I have 2 speakers on one speaking slip. I know. Can I have one of you represent both of you? And this is Janice Makshinoff and Janet Rich and And you'll be the designated spokesperson?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's me, and I absolutely hate it.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Janice Maxinoff. I live at 21816 Vivienda Avenue here in Grand Terrace. This is Janet Rich at 11701 Terrace Avenue. She's owned that property since the late 60s. When Katie, myself, and Jeffrey requested this come up on the agenda, we all had different reasons for what we wanted to talk about. Katie, it was her property value, Jeffrey, land use. Mine was peace of mind, because we've had this fight. Anyway, there's 3 of the 4 property owners in Area 2, because I'm going to break it up into the 2 areas that were initiated. Area 2 is the southern area. Area 9 is the northern area. I don't have too much concern about Area 9. My concern is Area 2. So 3 of the 4 property owners in Area 2 are here to request that the council fix a problem created back in 1984 against the property owner's wishes at that time. Ta-da! Can we all come together and fix the issue? Let's start with the 84 zone change. At the time, there were 3 residential agricultural owners residing in Area 2. There was Chuck and Ruth Hines, Pam and Jean Banta, Janet and Buck Rich. The southwest property was and still is undeveloped. These were the property owners in the Area 2 light ag, which the zone change affected. The 3 of 4 property owners that lived and worked their ranches objected to the zone change and were told that the ag overlay was to be put on there and they would never have to worry about it. Well, sometime between 1984 and 1999, the overlay was taken off with no notification to property owners. I would assume it was right around the time that Riverside Highland came and changed out our water meters, because we were no longer allowed aggregation rights. And I think that was around 1996. My neighbor and I started coming to the meetings and asking why the ag overlay was taken off. And we were given no explanation, but the ag overlay was reinstated and put back on the property. In the meantime, before it was reinstated, the Banta property, which is McConnell's property, was sold. It was sold as light industrial. So if the ag overlay, for whatever reason it disappeared, was still there, we wouldn't be having this problem that keeps coming up time after time after time. So I have a few questions and statements. There's been no development in Area 2 or Area 9 since 1984. I've not spoken to one resident in Area 2 or anything south of Vivienda that wasn't in favor of this zone change. Once the trestle at the end of Vivienda is abandoned by the city of Colton, which gives you access to La Cadena, we're going to only have one way in and one way out of that property. Okay, I'm going to be really fast. On the agenda report, it says that it supports goal number 5. I didn't understand what goal number 5 was, so I was just wondering. And I have a lot more questions and statements, and if it goes to a town hall, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maxinoff and Ms. Rich. Are there any other requests to speak at this time?
None.
I see somebody in the audience that would like to come forward.
Bobby Forbes, 11850 Burns Avenue, Grand Terrace. I apologize for being late. I have no idea what has been said, but I do not want houses built down there. I took pictures recently when it rained, and the water comes not all the way up to Janice's driveway road, but it's a mess down there. The fire trucks can't find it. They don't have access. I don't know what the pros and cons are that have been said, but I don't want to see 2, 3, 4, 5 houses come in down there. I think it would be bad for the neighborhood. We're going to have increased fire trucks. We're going to have increased ambulances, delivery trucks, FedEx trucks, UPS trucks, all that stuff that goes with the neighborhood. even if there's only 3. They're still going to get that kind of stuff. Furniture delivery, Ashley's going to be down there. There was a truck stuck by my house this morning. It's going to come, and it's going to happen, and the roads are not set up for it, neither is the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Please come forward. Bobby Forbes, did you state your name before you spoke? I can't remember. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Darrell Moore, 2275 Manana Drive. Well, I remember way back when the Grand Terrace always had a rural character, and we only had just a store at the crossroads and a gas station and a barber shop. And I know we can't go back there, but this area for M2 zoning has always been problematic. There's just no infrastructure to support it, and I don't see how they would do it. I think ranchettes could work down there. It would be kind of nice to have a little bit of that still around. If the council in its wisdom wants to keep it as M2, I think you'd have to have a CUP or something, because M2 is such heavy zoning that there are many things that could go on down there in terms of noise, truck traffic, dust, and so forth. And we all remember the manhole builders fight. So I think this argument to allow the ranchettes is not a bad argument, or if that can't be supported, I think the M2 has to be severely limited, perhaps with a CUP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff McConnell, Walnut Avenue. I own the 5-acre parcel in the center on the south side there. Many issues here over the years for those of you, like Mr. Wilson, who has sat through most of these through the Planning Commission. Many projects have come and gone into light industrial, have not made it. I know some history because I've talked to a lot of people, and I'll give you a little background. To the left of Lacadena, Mr. Chris also has a property over there in escrow. There's a proposed development industrial, and but they have access directly off of Lacadena. It's improved. Okay, to the right of this 40-acre project over the UP Railroad that's being abandoned, that parcel, according to Mr. Suchel, Councilmember Suchel of Colton, that's going to be a light industrial project, and he has no intention of expanding Washington through his property. He's going to utilize it to develop buildings, which was recently scrubbed. That's where we had the homeless problem. So any industrial in this area would be solely, because you can't go underneath the trestles with trucks, would be come down Terrace Avenue, which is extremely old, which has been discussed many times before. Probably 100-year-old road. It has sinkholes from time to time. I have the pictures every time a sinkhole happens because I live right down the street. So being an industrial is every project that's come has always fallen apart. Now, if Mr. Crawford wants to keep his property industrial, I don't blame him one bit, and I have a possible solution. I have to leave that up to staff how to solve it. If it requires the full 40 acres zone industrial, we can keep have an overlay for his M2 floodplain, or vice versa, M2 floodplain with an overlay of ag overlay, and let whatever proposed project that the buyer's name is Patrick, which has been in escrow since June, by the way. I don't know what due diligence he has or hasn't done with staff, but June has been quite a long time. I would hope he's done something. So I don't. If you can leave it a mixed use, let the proposed project come and possibly fail like everyone has come for the last 17 years that I've been in town. So I don't deny him his right if he wants to try and develop it. Let him come forward. Last year, there was a proposed development for a truck terminal there. It fell. I didn't get past the first meeting of the Planning Commission. My neighbors were there. I was actually representing the developer, believe it or not. But it never made it past the first meeting of the Planning Commission. So if they want a development, let them propose it. You know, maybe it might work. But like I said, the problem is always going to be Public Works request for access traffic impact on Terrace Avenue, which I'm sure most of you have at least driven it once and know how deficient it is. And it is being eroded, like some people have said, from the recent rains. So I think that changing the whole thing back to agriculture would be fulfill a 2030 vision of quality of life. I have been in touch with many people for potential grants if they need grants. Some of them were here tonight.
Please wrap up, Mr. McConnell.
I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you. If anyone reverses everything, that would be good. I liked Sandra's proposal for the addendum, because I looked at the current agricultural zoning of county right now, and it's a mess. I don't know what it was in 1984. Maybe it was much nicer. So I support something that would include the whole thing, agricultural, even if it's an overlay for Chris's property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Anybody else wish to speak during this time? All right, seeing no takers, I'll close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of a motion. I have one question to staff, though, before we do that. If we have 1 acre parcels and homes and ranchettes are built on there, what type of improvement to the infrastructure needs to happen?
That's something that we would look at. For instance, if we took 10 acres or so and looked at creating the subdivision, then that process has its own analysis with respect to traffic. Right now, Terrace needs some improvement. The level of improvement would be commensurate with the type of development that's occurring. But it does need some level of improvement. We would also need to ensure that there's legal and physical access. So we look at all that. For instance, we've had discussions with people that wanted to do some level of industry. That type of improvement may be more extensive than reoccupying one structure that used to be a residence. So we would look at the intensity of the use and what would be needed to support that intensity of development.
And who would be responsible for the infrastructure upgrade?
It would be the developer.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have a question for the city attorney and for the city manager. How many, what is our legal obligation here when we're in the midst of maybe considering a zoning change and someone's in escrow?
Okay. Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, the fact that somebody's in escrow would not prohibit you from going forward. The hearings that you would have regarding the zone change or whatever would be provided to them. If the escrow closed and they received entitlements for something before the zone change, maybe they would be what people call grandfathered in. It all depends on what the timing is.
Mr. City Manager.
Yes, and Mayor and Council, just for a point of clarification, the actions that you're being asked to take tonight, if you were to approve this contract and the study was completed, you would not be changing the zoning of this land. You would be providing a mechanism for it to occur. So if you approve the report tonight, you'll get an addendum to the general plan that would allow you to, well, what the addendum would do is, right now you have the 3 properties that are non-conforming uses, and you have the 2 properties that are non-conforming uses. So what would happen is, if the plan was approved, those non-conforming uses would become conforming. On the parcel that's can't be used anymore because it's been vacant for so long time, it would provide an avenue for that property owner to be able to get back into use that property. But if the property owner wants to separate that out into 5 separate parcels, there's a whole separate process that the property owner must bear the cost to do that. But the study in which staff is recommending is giving you the ability to establish the process on how you would do that. So any action done tonight, if you approve this report or you come back with a consulting report, isn't going to change Highland Services Corporation's land use. So just want to be clear on that.
So just to tie up, because what my thinking is, okay, we're studying this, but this does not preclude you from closing escrow, going through the planning commission, and it's independent of us, it only becomes appealable to us. So then So we're just studying this, and everybody is free to go on their planning track as nothing has changed.
All right. Any motion on this item?
I move the recommendation. This is kind of hard to read. The recommendation was staff requests the city council determine whether they wish to prioritize the proposal and bear associated costs, and if so, direct staff to return professional services contract to implement the planning service. So my rec is to say yes, we want to move forward with a not to exceed $18,000 consultant to proceed with studying this 40 acres north of Vivienda Avenue.
Mayor, I'd like to second and also add that it has to do with the lower level analysis as proposed by or preferred by the staff.
So amended.
Okay. Motion and second, please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Reinars, Hussey, Wilson voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNabb voted aye.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 6, which is the report on the feasibility of establishing an enhanced infrastructure financial district, or an EIFD. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Mayor and Council, G. Harold Duffy, the City Manager. Tonight you have before you a report on the feasibility of establishing an enhanced infrastructure financial district. As some of us call it, redevelopment 2.0. And I'm going to say I'm going to have Joe Dieguez from Cosma Company provide a presentation. And I think that once he finishes his presentation, it's going to really kind of tie in with the previous project that we just talked about. Mr. Diaz.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Joe Dieguez. I'm a Senior Vice President with Cosmont Companies. As you may know, Cosmont Companies is an economic development, real estate, and public finance advisory firm serving public agencies throughout the state and also private sector entities. Cosmont's been in business a little over 30 years. I've been with the firm a little over 6 years. I was last here presenting to City Council, I think it was early 2014, with regard to the approval of the long-range property management plan. Then a few weeks later, we presented to the Oversight Board here. Fortunately, that plan was approved by both at the Oversight Board level as well as the Department of Finance level. And in a somewhat related matter, we're back today to talk about how to accomplish economic development following the dissolution of redevelopment agencies in California. So the existing conditions as we see it, there are about 324 acres within Grand Terrace that we've included in our preliminary EIFD boundary. That includes about 665,000 square feet of existing structures, about 204 acres of vacant land. There's an agreement recently reached with the Lewis Group for the purchase and sale of one of those PMP properties, approximately 55-acre freeway opportunity site. There are various other private development projects planned or proposed throughout the city. There are required infrastructure improvements to really facilitate and catalyze that future private development throughout the city. That includes roadway, water, sewer, parks, other types of infrastructure. Some of the challenges, it's unlikely for existing infrastructure as it is today to provide and support the high quality development throughout the city that we're talking about without significant upgrades. Another challenge is that there are fewer economic development tools available for our use following the dissolution of redevelopment agencies. As always, last point, there is always competition for new projects among local jurisdictions, Grand Terrace and otherwise nearby. So what's the opportunity? At the state level, they've prioritized the installation of key local and regional infrastructure projects in support of green goals: sustainability, energy and resource efficiency, vehicle miles traveled reduction, greenhouse gas reduction. In support of those objectives, they've authorized some new tools including Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts, or EIFDs, and others. And among those, like EIFDs, they've enabled tax increment financing, that tool that temporarily went away with the dissolution of redevelopment agencies. It's a bit more targeted in the case of EIFDs. The priority is clearly on infrastructure and certain types of private development. Again, tax increment, of course, in essence, is a mechanism to capture a portion, all or a portion, of a new assessed value growth beyond a baseline set at formation, and direct those revenues for certain uses, in the case of an EIFD, primarily infrastructure uses. It happens to be the case that the necessary infrastructure improvements that we are talking about within Grand Terrace are eligible expenditures pursuant to the EIFD legislation. And cities like Grand Terrace can additionally take advantage, if it were to pursue a tool like EIFD, could take advantage of the enhanced eligibility for other types of funding, be it grants like Prop 1 or Prop 84 water grants, or Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, Cap and Trade Program funds. You become a more desirable applicant for those types of funds when you've established a district such as an EIFD, which clearly prioritizes investment in sustainable infrastructure at the local level. So the exact summary, we were retained back in October of 2016 to take a look at this tool, to evaluate the viability. Does it make sense for us in light of our economic development goals here in Grand Terrace to try to inform a decision at this level, at the city council level, to proceed or not? Some of our key findings: EIFD does indeed have the capacity to serve as the financial vehicle to fund some of the key infrastructure we're talking about, unlocking revitalization in the form of private development. A tool like EIFD is most effective with a multi-jurisdictional approach, meaning that it's not the city going at it alone, but that we partner with other taxing entities like the county or special districts, other entities on the tax roll. It's also more effective with complementary funding sources, not just property tax increment alone, but other sources, be it grant funds or perhaps overlapping CFD, impact fee funds from the city, reimbursable developer contributions, private sector contributions. Next steps beyond this sort of preliminary analysis would be outreach to some of our potential partners, both public agencies like the county, utility agencies, other special districts, as well as the private sector, key landowners, potential developers in our area who we want to be our partners in this endeavor if it were a priority to move forward. I'm going to, about 30 slides total. I'm going to focus on only a few of them probably in great detail, but I will touch on all of them. I want to start with a little bit of context. The state clearly is shifting away from an oil-based economy. They've prioritized greenhouse gas emission reduction, vehicle miles traveled reduction, other sorts of going green, so to speak, and it's manifested in a variety of different ways. Sustainable infrastructure investment, energy-saving industrial processes, renewable energy investments, the cap and trade program itself, building efficiency, changes to CEQA analysis and methodologies. And what we see is, as opposed to backing away from some of these ambitious environmental goals, they've only accelerated. We saw that most recently in passage of SB 32, which now targets 40% of greenhouse gas emission levels, 1990 levels by 2030. And then, I guess beyond that, is the new administration at the federal level, which has clearly prioritized infrastructure investment. We see this translating into a new form of economic development at the local level, utilizing what these tools are meant for, in our case, sustainable infrastructure, to placemaking and community revitalization at the local level. We do it by trying to utilize, we can do it by trying to utilize one of these tools that they've authorized for use at the local level, EIFDs. Again, there's a lot here. I'll touch on some of the important points. EIFDs are a tax increment financing tool. It enables tax increment financing for local and regional projects as laid out in the legislation. It includes purchase, construction, expansion, improvement, seismic retrofit, and rehabilitation of structures with a useful life of 15 or more years and of community-wide significance. They have a long list of eligible uses, they say, including but not limited to, and I'll list some of those in a moment. But it's pretty broad in its definition of infrastructure. It enables joint ventures. So in the case of former redevelopment agencies, what they're trying to get away from is the way it used to be, where, as Larry Cosman likes to put it, if you were playing in the sandbox, you can just take everyone else's toys and play with them. Now you've got to ask to play. You've got to get a county or a special district to agree to contribute some portion of their property tax to your EIFD. This tool gives some funding flexibility. They say you can sort of set up a funnel that's not just your property tax increment generated, but there can be other funds dedicated to it, other public funds like impact fee funds, or it can be private sector funds, a developer contribution in the context of a development agreement, as an example. There's a lifespan of 45 years for the EIFD. The clock technically starts ticking at the issuance of a bond or a loan. The managing entity is something called the Public Financing Authority, the PFA. The composition of that board really depends on who's contributing. If the city were to go it alone, your composition probably looks like a 5-member board, 3 members of the city council, 2 members of the public, typically who live or work in the area. If the county or another taxing entity partnered with the city in this endeavor, maybe it's 2 city council members, 1 county board member, or 2 of each. It's quite flexible in its definition. The governing document of the EIFD is something called an Infrastructure Financing Plan, an IFP. Think of it as kind of a mix between an RDA implementation plan and a CIP at the city level, with the clear focus on infrastructure. There's no public vote to create the district. There is, however, a 55% voter approval required for the issuance of tax increment bonds by the EIFD. That vote is either by registered voters, if there are 12 or more voters registered within your EIFD area, or it's by the landowners if it were an area with 11 or less registered voters. Schools can't participate even if they wanted to. Very clear in the legislation. They can't contribute funds, they can't be on your board, even if they wanted to play. And to be very, very clear, what we're talking about here is a tax increment financing mechanism. This is not an increase in tax, it's not an additional assessment on a property owner's bill. That's not what this is. This is tax increment financing. So I talked about that exhaustive, non-exhaustive list was quite long in the legislation. What can you do with an EIFD? Variety of infrastructure, water, sewer, parks, open space, civic infrastructure, child care facilities, brownfield remediation, but also some private uses, affordable housing certainly, industrial structures for private use, properties that implement a regional transportation plan or sustainable community strategy, RTP, SCS, are just some examples. Some of the key terms, which I think we covered at some level, the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, the IFD, that's the entity. The governing board is the Public Financing Authority, the PFA. The Infrastructure Financing Plan is the plan that guides the work of the district, the IFP. When I say it's a diverse funding approach, you consider sort of the property tax increment as the base of the funds, but it can serve as sort of a pool for other types of funds. Various types of state or federal grants. As an example, the city has the option of dedicating residual property tax revenues distributed back from the RPTTF, Redevelopment Property Tax Trust Fund, following payment of enforceable obligations within each ROPS period. City receives property tax in lieu of vehicle license fees since 2004. That grows based on assessed value. That is an eligible funding source that can be dedicated to the district. Other entities, like utility agencies, can choose to dedicate other things like service charge revenues to the district. And certainly private investment. Need to stress that as well. So how would a district like this look for grantees? Potentially. We needed to start somewhere. We worked with city staff to try to prioritize certain areas where we expect planned or future potential development around the city. We ended up with about 324 acres highlighted in blue on this page. Notice that the 40 acres that we've been discussing for a bit tonight is included in the area. It's included because what does end up happening there does accrue property tax. Assessed value growth generates property tax. Property tax can be leveraged in the form of an EIFD, as an example, via property tax increment, new growth of property tax. If there is development and growth there, we'd like the ability to capture that and reinvest it in things like infrastructure. Very key topic of conversation here. So we've included that piece and several other pieces, of course, the freeway opportunity site that was in the long-range property management plan. I'll skip this one. I want to talk about some of the key strategic considerations. Again, 324 total acres, 150 parcels, about 95 unique landowners within our area. A little under 55 million in existing assessed value for the county auditor controller, 665,000 square feet of existing buildings. We included that freeway opportunity site, the Lewis site along the freeway, some other key projects and parcels, the town square and other projects along Barton, the Vivienda that we've been talking about, and other various opportunity sites throughout the city. The desired uses really span the range. We've got residential, potential retail, commercial, some mixed use, office, commercial, industrial, and of course the supporting private amenities. The needs in terms of infrastructure also range from roadway, water, sewer, flood control, parks, landscaping, signalization, others. We'll show the list on the following page. This is just an initial list. It started somewhere. We ended up with about 15.6 million of potential improvements could be funded with the EIFD. Our potential partners, the county, Sandbag, current Sandbag, county flood control, county library, county fire, all taxing entities on the property tax roll. Private sector are primarily our landowners and developers within our area, those who stand to benefit from a potential investment in infrastructure to support future private development. All right, busy slide, I apologize. What we're trying to do here is point out various types of land uses that we're talking about here. Our goal was to try to forecast development over, in our case, approximately a 20-year time period, and we want to be consistent, of course, with the land use planning of the city. Of course, I won't go through each one of these, but what we try to do is capture it in terms of units and square footages over time and what it actually translates into in terms of potential assessed value, the key driver for property tax, which drives property tax increment. Here are the initial infrastructure cost estimates. Among them, potential new library, community center, some other items right away, signalization, drainage, brownfields remediation, trails, contingency of others. This sort of initial list, just under 16 million. Again, this can be, we'd want to work with city staff, probably with your direction, to prioritize this list, organize it, but also prioritize it. What would be the most meaningful to the city, but also what would be most meaningful in terms of incentivizing and catalyzing private development, which is the purpose here. So what do? We have to look at what's the property tax flow within these areas. So Grand Terrace happens to be, we consider any city who gets more than 15 cents on the dollar of property tax. We consider that generally a higher property tax city. Grand Terrace is one of those, capturing on average about 20 cents on the dollar of property tax revenues within the city. County is actually less than us at 13 cents. But what you see in the table here are some other entities which kind of roll up to the county. County fire, county flood control, county library, but also San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water, a utility agency that does receive some portion of the property tax roll. When we look at this list, we look at potential partners, those who actually stand to gain from future assessed value growth within the area. Assessed value growth drives property tax revenue. All of these agencies receive property tax revenue. So we consider these potential partners. We need to be mindful of the fact that we're overlapping with former RDA area within our city. The former RDA still has outstanding enforceable obligations. That's not surprising to us. Most cities, pretty much almost all the cities that we're working on in terms of EIFDs or CREAs or different types of tax increment tools, they've got outstanding obligations. It's going to take a while for those to unwind. In our case, we've got a little over 35 million in tax allocation bonds and other obligations, which run through about 2033. What's important to note for EIFD purposes is that any debt or other obligations of the EIFD will automatically be subordinate to any and all existing enforceable obligations of the former RDA. We're fine with that. We want to prioritize that. We want to make sure that gets unwinded before we're focusing on new endeavors. That doesn't mean that we can't do one of these. It just means that within each ROPS period that we're paying off those obligations first before any residual revenues can flow to this entity. So that busy map that I showed you, here's another busy one. It translates all of that development and those opportunity sites across the city into things like units and square footages with some timing applied over the course of approximately 20 years. We wanted to take a conservative view of absorption, so we extended it 20 years to absorb some of those projects in terms of dwelling units, per square foot valuation factors. The bottom line is at the end of 20 years in today's dollars, you end up with about $467 million approximately in new assessed value. If you remember a few slides ago, I talked about there being around $55 million in existing assessed value in our 324 acres. You compare that to this much larger number, 467, and it gives you a sense of how much growth there is that offers potential for us to capture and reinvest, some portion of it, capture and reinvest in some of that infrastructure that really needs to happen to support that private development. So we take those development projections, and we wanted to apply some different sort of contribution scenarios, property tax contribution scenarios from the city and from the county, just starting with those two, remembering that there are other entities that can contribute if they so chose. Scenario one, we're saying the city contributes about half of its property tax increment, only from new development, not touching existing property tax revenues. We're assuming that the county in this scenario also contributes half of its lower 12.7 cents. And of course, they must consent to do so. We're saying this in this scenario also that the city dedicates half of its incremental property tax in lieu of motor vehicle license fees. Again, another property tax source that accrues with assessed value growth. And we grow that with the development over 20 years, and we also extend that revenue stream even beyond the point where the development quote-unquote stops at 20 years to the entire potential 45-year lifetime of the district. What we're showing here are just some snapshots, year 10, year 20, year 30 annual revenue snapshots. The city portion, the county portion in the middle column, the city VLF portion, second to rightmost column, and then the total. We take a present value to try to account for some aspect of the time value of money, understanding that a dollar received in 45 years isn't the same as a dollar received today. And on a present value basis over 45 years, we're talking about $10.7 million of funding capacity, call it. You can compare that to our initial improvement cost list, around $15.8 million, to get a sense of how that fares. This is a significant, more than two-thirds of that amount, about two-thirds of that amount, which would be potentially enabled with half the city, half the county, and not including other sources, private sector sources, not including contributions from other public agencies, County Fire, Valley Municipal Water, and others. In our second scenario, we basically bump up the city's contribution to 15 cents, so of its total almost 20 cents, so 75% contribution. What does that look like? We keep the city's property tax in lieu of MVLF still at the 50% level. That gets us in 45-year present value terms to about $13.1 million. So close to this sort of cracking that initial $15.8 million infrastructure nut. Again, that was just an initial list. What we try to do on the following slides is really illustrate what it means to have other entities partner with us. These are the same numbers, but these are, take those year 10, year 20, year 30 snapshots. Here's the year 1 through 45 snapshot, lined up infinitely close to each other over the course of 45 years. Here's what it looks like. In the dark blue is just the city's portion. In that scenario one, I call it the 50% scenario. Everyone's contributing half. The cumulative total in today's dollars over 45 years for the city is this dark blue, totaling about $24.4 million. In today's dollars, that's no discount rate. The county's portion of half of their 12.7 gives us another $15.5 million, today's dollars. And then our city VLF gives us another $14.8 million, bringing us, in essence, from that $24 million number up to about $55 million, including all these contributions, in today's dollars cumulatively. The point we're trying to show here is that stacking gives you greater funding capacity. Cooperation yields greater funding capacity. This is just looking at city and county. Again, not including in these graphics utility agencies, other county entities, county flood control, county fire. as an example.
Joe, can I just ask you to go back 2 slides? One more. One important point I wanted to make to the council is that under this scenario, this is half. So by doing the EIFD, the other half of this is going to be going directly to your general fund. So this would be half of the new growth that Joe's showing you. So that $4.7 million is half of your new growth because of the EIFD. And so the other half of that is that's new revenue going into the general fund, which you would do whatever you would normally do, but this other half would be committed. So the EIFD has 2 great components. It's actually growing your property tax, one half for your general fund if you commit it this way, and the other half for development. Now, in theory, if you didn't have an EIFD program, you might not ever achieve that number, or it could be 90 years as growth gradually moves on. But I just wanted to point out that 4.7 for the EIFD is also 4.7 directly into the city's general fund.
Yeah, part of if this were to move forward at some stage, the part of the infrastructure financing plan does include a fiscal impact analysis, which does a good job of illustrating not only to the city, but to the other taxing entity, what's in it for you if this gets done. But kind of backing up philosophically, because it's money that, at least at the city level, those funds dedicated that would otherwise go to the city general fund, you don't just throw everything into the basket as far as what you want to pay for in your infrastructure list. You want to be targeted. You want to pay for those things that will actually be important to incentivize private development. You don't just want to pay for things that would happen anyway. And that's, by the way, the same way that the county and other taxing entity partners are going to be looking at it. It's sort of the but-for argument. What is necessary to be invested in order to incentivize private development, future assessed value growth. So startup capital, a tax increment tool like EIFD takes time to sort of marinate. You have to set a baseline, and your baseline, you're at 0. Tax increment is 0 when you start because you're just setting your baseline. So a tool like EIFD takes time to build a tax increment. In the interim, there's a good place for complementary funding sources, something like grant funds or other city funds which can be granted or loaned to the EIFD and repaid back with property tax increment generation. Private sector sources, again, a contribution from a developer in the context of a development agreement is a good example of dedication to the district, which can be paid back in part or in whole by the EIFD property tax increment. There's sort of a variety of ways you can use your property tax increment, and that's why we call this a flexible tool in a sense. It plays well with other tools. So what does it look like if this were to move forward? At a very high level, there's an adoption of a resolution of intention to form the district. When that's done, you're basically saying at the city and potentially county and other special district levels, we want to pursue this thing. And when you pass that resolution, you form your public financing authority board. So it's by that time that you want to already know who are your partners and what is your board makeup going to look like in terms of city council, county board, other special district board members. The PFA's first job once formed is to prepare the guiding document, the infrastructure financing plan. Lays out what are you going to do over the course of your lifetime? What infrastructure are you going to invest in? What is the private development that's going to drive the assessed value growth? This is much more specific than former RDA implementation plan. The new legislation is clearly geared towards transparency and accountability. You've got to lay out in some pretty great detail what are you going to do and where's the money going to come from. And there has to be once you enter into tax sharing agreement with other public entities as appropriate, you eventually approve your infrastructure financing plan and form your EIFD. That number 4 can't happen until there's a publicly noticed public hearing where you first send out your infrastructure financing plan to all your property owners and taxing entities to review. Recap some of the key considerations. When you send out your IFP, infrastructure financing plan, to your property owners and your potential taxing entity partners, you're also including the CEQA for what you're including in your infrastructure financing plan. A lot of our uses are consistent with existing general plan zoning, for example, so we'd be sending out general plan EIR with that IFP. Funding capacity, point number 2. Again, just to drive this point home, these things are way more effective when it's not just us. When we get entities like the county or other special districts on board with us, and when we also combine the property tax increment with other funding. Grant funds is an example. The point, kind of sub-bullet under the second bullet point, all the affected taxing entities have more to gain. People ask, it's a good question, what's in it for the county? Why would they participate at all? There is a case to be made financially for them. You can not contribute anything, and no EIFD happens, and no private development gets incentivized. Sure, they'll keep all of their 100% of their increment, but based on what, 2% annual growth of existing, what we estimated at $55 million in existing assessed value, or invest just half of that and accrue the other half of that on $467 million of assessed value growth over the same time period. We are working in other jurisdictions of painting that picture very clearly with actual numbers to potential partners. There's a case to be made for every taxing entity that receives property tax. Timing for adoption, there's just the timing that we want to be aware of. There's an assessment that gets equalized assessment roll that gets established in August of every year. There's a Board of Equalization finding that's the Board of Equalization filing that's necessary by December 1st of the year. These are necessary to be mindful of so that the BOE, Board of Equalization, can give guidance to county auditor controllers of how to administer this thing, how to divide up property taxes. So some greater detail on where we would go from here if it were the city's desire to do so. I want to do some outreach with our landowners and potential PFA members, county, and other taxing entities. The strategy that we've been employing elsewhere is start with the county. They're the big ones on the property tax roll. If you get them on board or interested, that helps you negotiate with other taxing entities like utility agencies. What we've done here is a preliminary analysis with some land use projections. We'd want to tighten that up and tighten up our contributions from not just the city, but from those other entities that we've been reaching out to. We want to finalize our boundaries. We've done a good job, thanks very much to city staff, of establishing some boundaries of some of our opportunity sites around the city. The city and other potential partner agencies would each adopt resolutions of intention to form the EIFD, and that's when you establish your governing board. Its first job is to prepare that governing document, the infrastructure financing plan, and number 5, the IFP. If necessary, there may be some CEQA updates, addendums, supplements, whatever the case may be, where there are changes to existing land use. Again, there's a distribution of that infrastructure financing plan, its corresponding CEQA, to all the property owners in your district and your taxing entities. The goal here is transparency. You've got to give them at least a 60-day heads up to review those documents before there's a public hearing in number 9 to discuss and approve your infrastructure financing plan and actually form your EIFD. Some administrative filings with the Board of Equalization, and then the district could go to work. Our goal in this initial phase was to get as far as giving you this information, giving you the findings from our initial analysis, see if it is of interest for you to continue, give you some of the potential cost benefits. If it were the desire to move forward, some of those next tasks, of course, outreach to both the public sector and private sector partners, refinement of these analyses, which leads into preparation of that plan, the governing document, the infrastructure financing plan. But along the way, evaluating other complementary funding sources, things like grants, private developer contributions, things like that. I guess the last thing I'll say is City of Grand Terrace is not alone. A lot of cities are looking at this. This really represents sort of redevelopment in light, the new way for economic development. Name your catchphrase, economic development 2.0. A lot of cities are looking at this. We're working with the City of Rialto and an enhanced infrastructure financing district in their airport area. There's largely industrial in that area. Riverside, City of Riverside is looking at CREAS, Community Revitalization and Investment Authority. They have a much greater focus on affordable housing there, which is why they looked at that tool. In our work for the Southern California Association of Governments, SCAG, we are looking at the passenger rail project between Redlands and San Bernardino as a potential application of EIFD or CREA, perhaps more likely EIFD. So, this is a tool that is being evaluated. Very happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your report, Mr. Villegas. Does council have any questions at this time? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I attended a meeting with the SCAG Executive Director on behalf of the mayor about 2 weeks ago, and he's very concerned about workforce housing and about the inertia, I guess, that there is in huge planning bodies and multi-jurisdictions and the state legislature being focused elsewhere. And he offered, his 113 staff, he even offered Cosmont that he has on contract. I attended a conference with USC, and USC wants to be involved. The League of Cities had people talking from the Brownfields recycling group and another group I can't quite remember, about stacking, retiring debt, all kinds of strategies to kind of leap through this. But my thinking is, because I just don't want this, I know, because this isn't a lot of money for your time, but I would like to have to sit down with Cosmont before you move to just say what my viewpoints are, and I'll state them publicly. I was involved working for the Board of Supervisors 30 years ago. There was a Santa Ana landfill that we talked about making into a regional park. Its shared boundaries are Riverside, City of Colton, and Grand Terrace. And when I left the project, there was solid waste money set aside, and during that era, when I was involved at the county, cap and trade meant you reduced emissions somewhere else and you gave credit somewhere else, and it seems like that would serve a purpose there. And also, the city of Colton wants sports fields. We need sports fields, and that might be something to tie in there. The other thing is the city of Colton is talking about possibly having a transit stop for Metrolink. And I know Mr. Barnett was here about the High Grove one. It just seems that because we're a small little city that maybe we might want to stretch out our jurisdiction a little bit, if that's possible on some things, and maybe it could be this entity or we structurally carve out, what the debt load is and what the benefit is amongst us. But it seems like if Grand Terrace is going to participate in workforce housing or transit, we're going to have to expand our partnership. And that would include the county, because that would be the county land, and it would include 2 municipal districts, entities neighboring us. And, I have a lot of respect for your organization, and so I thank you for coming and presenting this for us, and I support it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions at this time? Okay. Thank you. I'll open up to public comment if there's anybody that would like to comment on this item.
None.
No forms turned in. Is anyone here that would like to approach at this time? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose that we approve the contract with Cosmont Companies in the amount of not to exceed $36,000. I understand that to be through December 31st, 2017, for outreach to the public and private entities to establish an infrastructure financial plan for the implementation of EIFD with $16 million of public infrastructure improvements. Authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. Authorize the establishment of Fund 75 as the Advanced Infrastructure Financing District, EIFD Fund. And authorize the EIFD Fund, Fund 75, to borrow funds from development impact fees and that is borrow, to cover the cost of the agreement with Cosmont Companies, and number 5, approve the appropriation of $36,000 from the following funds to cover a loan to the EFD fund. Street Fund, Fund 11, $9,000, Storm Drain Fund, Fund 12, $9,000, Park Fund, Fund 13, $9,000, and Facilities Fund, Fund 19, $9,000.
Second.
Second, please vote.
Motion passes, 5 ayes. Councilmember Reinars, Hussey, Wilson voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
Item 7 is consideration of a professional services agreement with Interwest Consulting Group.
Do we have a 5-minute break?
Okay, we can have a 5-minute break. We'll recess for 5 minutes.
So before you have consideration of a professional service agreement with the InterWest Group, and I'll make this rather quick. This is about the public-private partnership with the Lewis Group. As the council is aware, we have this property here is currently in escrow with the Lewis Group, and this is private sector property on the other side. There's a road in between Commerce Way that we'd like to connect all the way down to Main Street and Taylor. So the current property is in escrow with Lewis Group, and it's going to come out of escrow in March 2017. The Lewis Group was required to do a master plan the area, and part of the master plan is the extension of Commerce Way. And so the Lewis Group, for their project, they're going to be implementing a road from Main and Taylor to Van Buren. So the estimate is there's going to be about $3.5 million for that expansion of the road all the way up to Commerce Way. But the Lewis project is really only needs from Main and Taylor to Van Buren. So the city is actually going to be working with acquiring private property, and this is what the InterWest Group will be doing for us. They'll be helping us interface with the private property owners through real estate negotiations and allowing us to make sure that we can align the road with the InterWest project. These are pictures of the project. They'll really kind of give you an overview of really the magnitude of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Drawn. Wow, that's a nice shot. I like that shot.
So, as I said before, the professional service agreement will allow for real estate services to represent the city in negotiations with property owners for private land acquisition for Commerce Way expansion, review project information and road design, provide input on right-of-way cost estimates for alignment of the project, and help develop the best approach for land acquisition in the future. InterWest is currently involved with the city through our I-215 project. They're actually helping us manage the project with Sandbag, and then they are coordinating between the city and Caltrans and the Lewis Group for the actual overall projects. So that's the scope of work. Any questions?
Any questions of Mr. Duffy at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will ask if there are any speakers on this item.
None.
Okay, bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
I move the recommendation to approve contract with InterWest Consulting Group in an amount not to exceed $50,000 to provide real estate services for the acquisition of private and remnant land resulting from the I-215 interchange project for the extension of Commerce Way to Van Buren, review of Lewis specific plan as it relates to the construction of detention basins and storm drains along the extension of Commerce Way to Taylor Street, terminating at Main Street.
Second.
All right, please vote.
Item passes 5 ayes. Council members Reiners, Hussey, Wilson voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNabb voted aye.
All right, thank you. Item number 8 is a 40-hour work week and operating hours of City Hall.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is kind of fulfilling what the council put into the overall budget for this fiscal year in terms of implementing a 40-hour work week. The staff recommendation is to implement a 40-hour work week, which is 5 days a week service from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Also, the staff added the issue of reinstate merit increases for employees that pass probation and employees with satisfactory performance ratings that are not at the end of their salary range. That's something else for the council to consider. The implementation of the 40-hour work week is 5 days a week from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It would be the end of the 36-hour work week, which employees are currently operating now, and the city's closed every Friday. It would increase the service to residents and businesses, and it would eliminate the loss of income to the employees. The reinstated merit increases for employees that pass probation. Currently, when an employee is hired by the city, they have an annual probation of 1 year. We have employees who have passed probation and at that point in time have not received any merit increases. And so this is an opportunity to be able to provide them that merit increase. Also for employees with satisfactory performance evaluations that have not reached the top step of their salary range. So the city actually started this process almost 9 years ago, where they had to freeze because of budgetary issues, freeze the salaries. And so although we have a merit-based program if you're in a step range and you're successful even in probation or through a step process, you would get an annual evaluation and you would be compensated to the next level of the range. That does not happen for a number of years. And also the city, when they went through their layoffs a while back, they laid off an employee that we have and then brought the employee back shortly afterwards, but they eliminated that employee's longevity pay. And so one of the things that the council talked about through their budget deliberations was the ability that the 40-hour work week would be reinstated to the employees, and that might be a way to increase employee morale. During my discussions with the employees, the majority of the comments were about the no merit increases and the longevity of that has occurred for such a long time. And so it wasn't centered on the 36-hour work week. It was centered on merit increases and longevity pay as morale issues. So I wanted to bring that to the council's attention. In terms of my recommendation to the council is really about what I perceived to be, through the discussions, was the increased level of customer service. And so as we look at that question about increasing customer service, there are two questions that I had to try to answer. How do others operate? Well, in our nearby cities, the city of Redlands, San Bernardino, Colton, and Loma Linda operate on a 410. I think actually Redlands does the alternate Friday a 980 program. And then the issue of best service hours for customers. In order to try and accomplish, find information on that, we did a survey. And in that survey, we asked, how often do you visit City Hall? And the survey came back, 13% of the 82 respondents said, actually the 12% 82 respondents said they visit once a week. 17% said once a month. 29% said once a year, and 42% said rarely or never. And so if you combine that into a different chart, you would see that once a month or less was 88% of the customers that said they would visit City Hall, and then once a week was 12%. The next question we asked was, if you were to visit City Hall, would you be more likely to visit during, I'm sorry, I can't see that.
Between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m.
Let me look at my little chart.
8 a.m. and after 5 p.m. and from 8 to 5.
Thank you, yes. So between 8 p.m. and 6 p.m. was 13%. Before 8 a.m. and after 5 p.m. was 23%. And then from 8 to 5, normal work shift, Monday through Friday, was 64%. If the city modified its existing operating hours from 7:30 to 5:30 a.m., which would you prefer? 49% said 8 to 5 p.m. 5 days a week. The other 51% said it either had no impact or 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. So would would you find, the fourth question is, would you find it confusing if City Hall closed every other Friday? 54% said no, 46% said yes. As we went through the survey to ensure that there were not multiple votings, when we saw an IP address that had multiple votings, we discounted those from the overall total. So the fiscal condition, we currently budgeted $60,000 in this year's budget. Based on the charts that we've included in the budget report, the impact would be negligible for next year. It's about $60,000. If you include the longevity pay and the merit increases, you'd be adding another $12,000 to next year's fiscal year budget. So with that, I am available for questions. And I did want to let the council know, I believe that there are some employees that provided the council with a letter, and also, I think there are some employees here also tonight.
Okay. The $12,000 for next fiscal year's budget, would that be hard to find?
No, it would not, Mayor.
Okay. Does council have questions of staff? Councilmember Hussey.
How long do you have to work for the city to get longevity pay?
10 years.
And we only have one?
Right, so the employee worked for us for 10 years and was laid off and then brought back shortly afterwards.
We have anybody coming up on the 10-year mark?
This is for employees in City Hall, and Ms. Fortune, you want to?
Anybody coming up to the 10-year mark?
Councilmember Hussey, the 10-year longevity pay was taken away. That doesn't no longer applies. The city council several years ago took that away. So the employees who had it at the time were allowed to carry that, continue that. So any new employee coming up on 10 years will no longer receive this. The employee that we are referring to had it prior to the layoffs way back in 2008 or 9. So we're trying to reinstate it back to.
So we're not obligated to reinstate it?
For that one employee.
For that one employee.
Right. And it would not apply to any employees in the future.
Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, obviously, it seems we've all felt we wanted people to return to full-time. We wanted to have merit increases and restore that. I mean, I just can't, I know during the recession, I did furloughs and merit increases. I just can't imagine doing this for 9 years. It would be very demoralizing to me. I'm amenable to a 980, and I'll tell you why I'm amenable to a 980 and how it would. I don't think piling up a 10-hour workday accomplishes anything. But at the same time, I don't see how possible it's other cities are doing that work week fine. What I see more of an issue for our city is if we're going to do a 980, I want staff to be available on a Friday when I get my packet. And I'd like to know when the city hall is open and closed, because I don't even know. I don't even know when I can call. It's not on the website, especially around the holiday period. It's confusing. I know we had a discussion, and because we fully funded a new website, and all that's going to be happening. I think we're going digital with a lot of things, so there's not that much people that have to come in here or have to leave work or to come to City Hall. So I'm open to a 980, but I'd like it to be, I don't want it stacked to, well, when there's a Monday holiday. I want it around when we function as a city council. I want people, the day we get the packet, I want that Friday to be a full working day for everybody. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
This will still come back for discussion, correct, after public comment?
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll open up public comment. Are there requests to speak? Thank you. All right, so I have four names on this request to speak. Are you each going to speak? Or have you elected a spokesperson?
Greetings, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'll be the primary spokesperson, but each will have something to say. Adrian Freeman, for the record, Public Works Department. I've been asked to read a letter on behalf of the staff, but we do have three others here tonight. I can introduce themselves.
Can I ask you to hold on just 1 minute? I'm going to close this door.
From the vacuum cleaner.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Heidi Aguirre, Planning Department. Good evening, Jessica Lambarena with Public Works, Secretary. Thank you.
Good evening, Barry Owens, Code Enforcement, Planning and Development Services Department.
Thank you. Dear Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council, it is an honor for the City of Grand Terrace staff to serve the residents of the city. Some staff members have been doing so for more than a decade to the very best of our abilities. Unfortunately, some staff members in the Public Works and Planning and Development Services departments are unable to attend tonight due to prior engagements and very short notice about the council item. Therefore, we felt it was essential to provide a letter to council to voice our concern. Despite limited staffing, we strive to provide the highest level of customer service possible to the residents and businesses of Grand Terrace. Nearly a year ago, the city manager met with staff to discuss reinstating the 5-day work schedule. At that time, staff asked if a 4-10 schedule could be implemented to increase the hours we have available to residents and to businesses. City staff believe that customer service can be significantly improved to the public if counter hours were to be eliminated or expanded. We know that the counter hours are a tremendous inconvenience to residents and to business owners, even more so than the City Hall being closed on Fridays. To reiterate this point, many residents who took the survey that is referenced in the staff report tonight expressed that they are not significantly impacted by City Hall closing every Friday. Furthermore, there are many surrounding cities, including Loma Linda, that has a population size similar to ours or closer to ours, that are open Monday through Thursday. For example, the City of Redlands City Hall is on a 980 schedule, and they are closed every other Friday. The City of Loma Linda City Hall is open Monday through Thursday from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and the City of Colton City Hall is open Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. City of Grand Terrace staff would like the City Council to consider the 4-10 work schedule with the elimination or expansion of counter hours so that staff can provide a more excellent level of customer service to the residents and businesses of the City of Grand Terrace. And this letter is signed by the following: Heidi Aguirre, Planning and Development Services; Alex Capiz, Public Works Department; myself, Public Works Department, Adrian Freeman; Jessica Lambarena, Public Works; Ruben Montano, Public Works; Barry Owens, Planning and Development Service; and John Protic, Public Works Department. Staff would also like to clarify to the letter that you all have received this evening that staff is amenable to the 980 work schedule. Thank you all so much for your time this evening.
Thank you. And thank you all for waiting through the council meeting to speak.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item?
Sheriff McConnell, Walnut Avenue. There's two ways we can go when we become adults to work. We can go into the public sector, or we can go into the private sector. I chose the private sector, my line of work. My phone rings any time of the day. I always seem to be on. It's has good times, bad times about it, but that's my choice. I chose the private. Those who chose the public sector chose the life of a public servant. That's their job, is to serve the public. The rest, I'll leave up to you.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during this time? All right, seeing no takers, I'll close public comment and bring it back to council. And I think Councilmember Reinars, you had comments or questions?
Yes, the young lady said a lot of what I intended to say. Excuse me, I am in support of the 410, primarily because, excuse me, need some water. As I saw on the pie charts, it doesn't really make that large of a difference to the community. And as far as service goes, the extra time in the morning and the extra time in the evening will also be very helpful. And then the elimination of the counter hours. I've never understood the counter hours. You have city residents walking up to the counter, to the person at the counter, and having that person say, I can't help you. I'm sorry. Come back another time. If there's going to be counter hours, those doors have to be locked. That never made sense to me, and it still doesn't. So if you eliminate those counter hours, that 410 will give the residents a lot more time throughout the week. And if the community doesn't really care as far as impact, and not that many people visit City Hall, I've also heard that Friday is a historically slow day for residents coming into City Hall. So there's basically no impact on residents from this change. And if it's something that the employees wholeheartedly want, I go back to a saying, if you take care of the employees will take care of the customers. If it's going to be that much of a morale issue and people want it that badly, you're going to have a happier group at that front counter. You're going to have a happier group out in the field. And that can apply to service as well. You get length of service that's roughly the same, and you will get better service because people are more excited and happier to provide that service.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Hussey.
Brian, I agree on make the employees happy and better service, but I work 410s and it takes I'm old school, so I go in there and work. Not saying these employees don't go in there and work, but we're trying to help the employees. I'm all for the merit promotion. I haven't had a pay raise in 8 years. I work for the federal government. I'm not for the longevity pay because I think you come in and get your paycheck, that's longevity enough. But I'm not for the 410s for as far as City Hall. If we're going to give the employees something, they have to give us back something. We had to have, either like Mayor Pro Tem said, either the 9/8s or 9/80s or the 5 days a week. We have to give something back to our taxpayers who pay the taxes on here. Morale, yes, I'm a firm believer on morale, 100%. I'm also a firm believer on taking care of the taxpayers. I have to look at both ends of the spectrum here. They voted me in to take care of them. Also, I'm for the employees. I want things done. I don't want on Friday, just like today, for example, I called Mr. Duffy. You had a guy out there at the high school, the middle school, selling fruit. I don't want somebody selling stuff to the kids at our middle school. Yes, code enforcement went out. Fridays, I live here, there's still a lot of stuff going on Fridays. I want somebody here on Fridays, so if we called, they could take care of it. They drive around, they see the potholes, they could fix that instead of waiting until Monday. So, I'm for the 5, work 5 days a week, but I will vote on for the 9/80s. I'm for the merit promotions, because I believe you guys work, and I know how the retirement thing goes, and you guys need to get a pay raise, you need to keep motivated. I'm not for the longevity pay, but I'm also here to take care of the taxpayers. That's all I am.
But
Councilmember Reinhardt.
I thought I covered that this has no effect on the taxpayers.
The taxpayers are going to want to see something in return if we're going to give them a pay raise.
It has an effect on me. There's just no way that a 10-hour workday is that productive. It's slamming a lot of hours into it. We deal with very deep public policy issues and public service issues, and to be closed every Friday, especially in a small city like this, is not workable. The reason I'm amenable to a 9/80 is because I recognize that this is Southern California. We have commuter workforce, so is to make some kind of accommodation, for that. But my workload as a council person doesn't fit with having people working 410. There's a lot that goes on in this city that, and then you add the holidays, and it's just a lot of days of where we're not at peak production. So really, it's not, there needs to be times where people can meet, people can strategize, and we have the things that we consider today, just the Lewis Group thing, is a tremendous workload that needs to be done in a measured and paced way. And I don't think we're accomplishing that in a 410.
So have we not been accomplishing that
Councilmember Renars.
in the current system that we're in? So this has...
We're behind.
Councilmember Wilson, any input on this?
According to the agenda report, there is a financial impact, $72,000. Full annual impact of the elimination of the reduced work week, merit increases, and longevity pay is approximately $72,000. As you know, I'm not in favor of increasing our cost to operate for any reason, so I wouldn't be in favor of anything that would do that.
And if I may, I look at the idea of returning to 5 days a week open, saying we are open for business during this time where we are trying to develop the vacant land that we have. And it could be that once we are built out, we look at reducing our days a week that we're open. But I think right now being open on Fridays is going to help with that effort.
Mm-hmm.
And it does cause an issue, especially on the weeks where we have holidays. When we have a Friday holiday, we end up closing on a Thursday. So we're open 3 days a week at that time. Makes it harder to get the council packets out on time. And there have been a number of times where they've been delivered to my house very late. We've had people come in on Fridays working overtime to get the packets out because they couldn't get them out on Thursday. And I would like to see us return to a 5-day-a-week operation. I do understand the position of the staff, and I really appreciate you taking your time to come and talk about that. I'm very much for going back to our 40-hour work week and reinstating the merit increases. I think that anyone coming off of probation especially should be able to have an opportunity to have a little bit of a pay increase. But I really do think that open 5 days a week is us putting together our program and saying we're going to dedicate the time to do it. And I really did think that once we changed the 40-hour work week that meant, and I wish it had it in here, that those counter hours would go away, because I don't see a reason for those. Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, hearing your point of view, I'd support you on that. I think we're too small. We're at a critical path. We're behind. We don't have the revenues to support a full-service city. We have a city manager who has presented with us strategies that are very labor-intensive and need consistency and need a consistent work effort to get done. And having a stop-go system, it doesn't work. The agenda items require, our careful thinking and consideration. And I really like to have them on Wednesdays, and we've fallen, behind on that. And from my perspective, we've been pretty indulgent, knowing what our limitations are. I don't see this as a budget increase. It's just restoring some emergency furlough cuts, freezes, those kinds of things. Another thing that's a detriment to us, we've lost almost all our institutional memory as an organization. And so we need to have the basic here. I also was a budget person, and people were working 410s, and we had furloughs, and we had overtime.
that was, approaching several $100,000. I think there's and I don't say these employees, but on the way here, I'm listening to on KFI radio about the city of Richmond and the pension costs there, and I think there's a perception out there that public employees can spike their pensions, which they were able to do before Brown stepped in and stopped that, but they would do overtime to spike and then have compressed work weeks and those kinds of things. And I think it's time to move back to the old paradigm of an 8 to 5 work week. There's just no way that people are that productive on a 10-hour day. I worked a 10-hour day. It absolutely did not work for me. There was no way. When you have an intensive job working with figures and you're going to do a 10-hour cram day, it's just too much.
All right, any other comments at this time? Councilmember Wilson.
I think it's a faulty premise to talk about the upcoming projects in relation to existing staff 100%. I believe that the way we intend to approach this, and I believe it's in our business plan, is that we will be working in concert with entities like Lewis or whoever our suitors are, and they're going to be paying fees that will augment a supplemental workforce. Our existing staff would be more responsible for counter situations and patio covers and whatever we need to do to be able to keep running as a city. But so far as the special projects will actually be augmented by outside staff, which is what we have a history for doing as well. I also think it's important for us to remember the thought pattern behind the CalPERS issue, and when we start to staff up money, it becomes exponential. And that's how we got here to begin with. So I'm not in favor of increasing our, staff load.
Okay, so you are for not reinstating the 40-hour work week in any way, and you are not for any kind of merit increases in the future? Okay. Councilmember Hussey, did you have a comment?
I'm in favor of the 40-hour work week and the merit promotion, but not the longevity pay.
Okay. Well, is there a motion that somebody would care to make?
You got?
I'd like to make a motion to confirm the council's desire to implement a 40-hour work week, 5 days a week from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and reinstate the merit increase for employees in past probation and have reached the top of their salary range. And I would like to eliminate the longevity pay.
I second the motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? All right, please vote.
Motion passes. 4 ayes, 1 no. Council members Reinars, Hussey voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNable voted aye. Councilmember Wilson voted no.
Thank you. And again, I'm going to thank the staff members who did show up tonight. I understand that our decision was probably a disappointment, but I do appreciate your respectful manner in coming forward and speaking your mind, and thank you very much. All right. Our next item is City Manager Communications.
Just very quickly,
Don't say that.
the 10th annual Walk on Blue Mountain is going to happen on March the 5th at 8 a.m. And so we have these boards all around town. We'll start putting some radio ads on AM 1640. We'll have some ads in the local paper. But it's going to be an exciting event. It's our 10th anniversary, and there's a gathering place at the Azure Hills Church afterwards, so you can grab a bite from a food truck. It'll be a good time for all.
All right. Food truck, is that the one that we see going around?
No.
It's a different food truck with a business license, right?
So this is actually something interesting. We should be seeing relatively soon the old Taco Village should be replaced with the Fiery Grill. It's a barbecue grill place that came in for the permits, 6 new employees, and operation hours from Thursday through Friday, so it should be good. And this is, the seniors, we had an outing yesterday. They went to see the movie in Redlands at La La Land, and so they had a great time. I checked in with them, and it was good time by all. I think they kind of scared Redlands a little bit, the theater, because Redlands did not have enough ADA seats for our ladies, and so they'll be prepared the next time that they go.
Yes, they will.
And that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we don't have a closed session tonight because it's Valentine's Day.
Thank you, Pat. It's Valentine's Day. Wow.
Yes, we have a member of our staff who is very valuable to us, but who has chosen to go to work in another municipality, and I think she's going to go to work there and decide that she misses us and comes back. Okay, that's my wishful thinking. Anyway, Pat, I want to close the council meeting in your honor tonight. Is there anything that you'd like to say?
I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity that was given to me. I will always treasure my time here. I thank you all. It was great working with all of you. And I'm just in Moreno Valley. I can come back and say hi.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'm giving you my roses. Thank you. All right, so our next regular city council meeting will be held Tuesday, February 28th, 2017 at 6 p.m. Agenda item requests must be submitted in writing to the city clerk's office no later than 14 calendar days preceding the meeting. And I want to thank my colleagues for your discussion tonight. And thank you again, staff, for putting together this meeting and the wonderful decorations. We are adjourned.